I'm Dawn Tan. Welcome to CNA's special coverage of Singapore Budget 2026 in just under half an hour. Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, in his capacity as Finance Minister, will deliver the budget statement. We're expecting measures to boost economic transformation, secure good jobs for Singaporeans amid a challenging geopolitical scene, as well as address persistent cost pressures. Our reporter is on the ground at Parliament House and will also be checking in with industry voices over the next few hours. And here in studio, I'll be joined by two guests to break down what today's budget means for Singapore and for Singaporeans. Here with us this afternoon, Selina Ling, Chief Economist and Head of Global Markets Research at Strategy at OCBC, and Associate Professor Walter Teixeira from the Singapore University of Social Sciences School of Business. As Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will deliver this year's budget statement shortly, it sets out the agenda for this new term of government after PM Wong led the ruling party to victory in his first electoral outing as Prime Minister last May. Our reporter Nadira Zaidi will be watching it unfold from Parliament House.
Amid the volatile global environment and rapid technological change, job security remains one of the biggest concerns for Singaporeans. Even as the country's economy outperformed expectations in 2025, recent data shows that job creation is still at its lowest since at least 2005. With these issues top of mind, Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Wong has said he will address them in his budget statement later. In a video released on social media yesterday, he also had conversations with workers on making it easier to improve their skills.
The government will do more to support Singaporeans in navigating these changes, and that includes helping you manage job transitions, equipping you with relevant skills to stay competitive, and ensuring that all Singaporeans are able to secure good jobs with rising incomes.
Business support is also expected to be a key focus in Budget 2026 as experts highlight the shift towards an AI-driven economy. They're hoping to see more cash or training grants to help both large and small firms keep up and truly embrace AI. As for social support, experts are anticipating ample funds for seniors as Singapore officially becomes a super-aged society this year. At the same time, more help to strengthen social mobility for youth and young families. In light of today's complex environment, experts are looking forward to a more targeted approach instead of a broad-based one. They say this could provide assurances not only to businesses but families as well.
We're just minutes away from Budget 2026 to be delivered by Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Wong. And this year's budget is expected to sharpen its focus on workers as well as job security, even as the economy posts solid growth and the labour market remains resilient. Budget 2026 will be the first since last year's general election and also the first in this term of government. Among other things, Prime Minister Wong is expected to respond to the Economic Strategy Review, or ESR's midterm recommendations. Now, those, of course, were announced in late January. Joining me now are Selina Ling from OCBC and Walter Teixeira, Associate Professor at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. Selina, first to you. Recent budgets in a post-pandemic era had been focused on inflation, on, of course, post-pandemic support, household support as well. But for Budget 2026, there are expectations of a type of reset, perhaps. You've spoken about that in the past. And what would you want to see in this budget? And why is now the moment to make those changes?
Well, for the last few budgets, it was really very much about coping with inflation, helping cost of living, and, cushioning the broad economy as it recovers from the pandemic. I think now is the time to actually make that transition. Given the whole global economic landscape, the backdrop is geopolitical tensions are here to stay. A lot of tariff and trade uncertainties continue to persist. And there's a lot of realignment of global supply chains. But of course, with every crisis, there are opportunities. So I think for Singapore, we're kind of in a good position. Growth is firmer than expected. Inflation has come off. And I think it's a good time to actually rethink about how Singapore is going to navigate the future from here.
Singapore certainly is in a strong position right now. Walter, there are still trade-offs, though, that exist between ensuring that you have enough coverage for household support and then maintaining sort of fiscal balance as well. What is the clearer challenge for Singapore this year for you?
Well, I think this year is actually no time for caution, and that's because, it could be a year where actually decades happen. If you look at the big global bet on AI, we actually don't know what's going to happen. It could be a boom or a bust. It could be the year where AI actually changes a lot of businesses fundamentally, or it could be the year where actually we discover there's a lot of overinvestment and, companies collapse and so on. And in all likelihood, it's a bit of both. So then when you add to that, of course, the geopolitical tensions and risks, as Selena mentioned earlier, I think basically we have to be quite bold. We have to make sure we have the firepower necessary in the budget to deal with these issues and more. At the same time, of course, because it is the start of a new term of government, we also don't want to put our fiscal house into a position where we might have to, really watch our spending over the next 4 years. So I think it's going to be balanced but targeted, but also, take advantage of these opportunities when they come up this year.
Selena, as Walter said, we need to be bold, but how expansionary do you expect it to be? Taken into consideration the uncertainty that does lie ahead, because all of that can go bottom up in a way in a very short period of time.
Well, Singapore has always been fiscally prudent. If you look at the past couple of terms of government, we've always accumulated quite a fair bit of fiscal surpluses. So I think to start this term of government, it's very likely they'll go for a very broadly balanced type of budget. But given how strong, economic growth was last year, I do think that corporate revenue collections will still be very buoyant for this year. So even with this kind of positioning, I think there is still fiscal space to make some big, bold bets. It's not about spraying all your bullets freely, but I think in terms of big, hairy goals that we want to have, for instance, the AI hub situation, I think definitely, we have to put some real firepower down there.
Walter, for Singapore, the issue of employment, we have seen a sort of a mixed bag. We're in a fairly good position with this, although in some of the demographics, we have also seen it sort of tapering off a little bit. Restructuring cost pressures, they hit households as well. Are there any sort of particular employment or retrenchment risks, perhaps, that Budget 2026 needs to address?
Yeah, so I think what's been surprising to me is actually how deep the disconnect is between how people are feeling on the street and what the broader numbers are saying, right? Because when you look at the macro numbers, strong GDP growth, unemployment, retrenchments basically at pretty much lows, consistent with full employment in Singapore. And yet, if you talk to people, they say, I'm worried what's going to happen to my job. I heard and my son or daughter just graduated, is looking for jobs, they can't get one. So there's a lot of, I think, I wouldn't say we're at the crisis of confidence yet, but we could well be if we don't do something about it. And I think that's where it's important for this budget to actually step in and shape the narrative, to make sure that we have the support systems in place. I think the Prime Minister alluded to that, that will be in place there in case there's more disruption and, people actually see that their jobs change a lot or that they are having real difficulty finding jobs. Then we need those support systems in place to help people reskill, retrain, and so on. And we've been doing that. Last year, we introduced job seeker support. That's more targeted at the lower income group. So perhaps we need something in there as well for the more middle income and the fresh graduates and so on as well.
So, Walter, Selena, the economic strategic review that has been ongoing, we have had a sort of an update on that and some recommendations as well. It has, of course, shown that future growth doesn't necessarily mean better jobs or the jobs that everybody would want. So tailoring what we do next is important, right? Sort of calibrating our next moves. For Budget 2026, that means perhaps a bigger investment in competitiveness, in business competitiveness. Are you expecting that?
I think definitely so. I think this is not the time to be too cautious. It's not really about handouts to help businesses and workers tide over this period of time. I think it's really about positioning for the medium term to make sure that, in whatever fractured world that we live in, Singapore still has a competitive edge. So it's very much about, improving our productivity, ensuring that we have jobs growth and good jobs growth in particular. If you look at the EDB FDI numbers, they already suggested that although FDI is going up, but the number of jobs that will be created may not grow as fast as what it was in the past.
Right.
So there's a lot of focus on creating good jobs and how do we continue to spur income growth across all the levels of society.
Yeah, spurring income growth as well as looking at new growth areas, because as an example, last year with manufacturing, there was a lot of, manufacturing made up a big part of our GDP, but the number of people employed in the manufacturing sector is much less. It's like 20% of our GDP, but 10 to 12% of the workforce.
So that's the irony. I mean, if you look at technological disruptions, I mean, AI in particular, you know, what kind of jobs are going to be disrupted? I mean, if you look at correction in financial markets, a lot of the sell-off in all the related sectors is about basically putting, you know, companies, software type of, industries basically eating their lunch.
Yeah. Walter, let's talk a little bit about cost of living support, because what you mentioned earlier about expectations when it came to a person looking for a job or a young graduate having an anticipation of something and not finding something within 6 months, sometimes even a year after graduation. The issue with cost of living is that even though the economy grew 4.8% last year, people don't necessarily feel that their livelihoods have improved by 5%. So how much do you expect the government to actually put into Budget 2026? I mean, taking into account, we're trying to be cautious here.
Right, so I think this is another area where there is actually a disconnect between what the numbers are showing and how many households are experiencing the economy. Because, you know, we didn't just have a high GDP growth last year, we actually turned the tide on a number of years where we had really stagnant real income growth because of, you know, post-COVID inflation. We had really robust median household income growth last year. It's above $12,000 household now at the median. But the problem is we still have many households who are trying to catch up. And of course, we've got retirees, those in fixed incomes. So I think what this calls for is thinking about more targeted support. You know, we've been used to CDC vouchers that everybody enjoys, but frankly, there are households out there, they go and take the voucher, spend it on durian, right, instead of groceries. So perhaps we need to think about, is there a way of targeting the support more towards those who really need it? And that will save some of our fiscal firepower, of course, but also make sure that the people who need it the most actually get the help.
Selena, how generous can the government be with those CDC vouchers, the rebates, the YouSave? Will we see them all at the level that we saw them in 2025?
Well, as economists, I would think that we need to be a little bit more targeted. So I do agree with Walter. I think some tiering according to, you know, even family size, income levels, extent of need, I think probably will, it makes the job of the administrator a little bit tougher, but I think it makes fiscal sense to do so. But I think, you know, CDC vouchers are kind of like a bit like the YouSave and the other rebates. They have become a quasi-permanent feature of the landscape. So people do expect it, and it does help.
Yeah, but in a way, I mean, analysts have been saying they expect to see it sort of roll back a little bit. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think the rollback really is because could you make better use of some of this fiscal transfers? But we also do recognize that for CDC vouchers, you are also meant to be helping the local businesses.
Yeah.
So there is a twin, objective to that. It's not just about helping the households. So if you take away or you reduce the size of the CDC vouchers, then the small businesses and SMEs, they will ask, so what else can be done for them?
So, Walter, back to you on social spending, because that, of course, accounts for almost the largest, I think, part of our expenditure year on year. It needs to, whatever we put into it, right, we want maximum value back on that. Where do you see maybe the greatest opportunity for Singapore's social spending to deliver better outcomes in that way? I mean, if you take away this issue of, all right, choices that people make, if they want to, they can spend their money on whatever they want with those CDC vouchers, after all.
Right, so I think for me, it's about education and training. I think that would be a really prime area to rethink, concentrate more spending on, because we can help the workers get better jobs, take advantage of these tech-enabled changes in productivity. And I think there are two big challenges and opportunities I think about here. One is basically, how do you help families with lower resources take advantage of our wonderful public education system? Because there, the problem isn't that we don't have the money for, free public education. It is that some of these families families just cannot take advantage because they lack the resources to help ensure their children attend school fully, take advantage of pathways, mentor them and so on. So one is how do you help the low-resource families? The other one is working adults. How do you help them actually adapt to tech and business disruption? Because here the problem is, again, not that we don't have money put into Skills Future, it is that the adults say they don't have time and energy to actually go for training, they don't know how to select courses and so on. We need to scaffold, calibrate this a bit better, not just money, but also helping people help themselves.
All right, thank you, Selina and Walter, for those insights. We will be hearing much more from both Selina and Walter throughout this show. And also, after Prime Minister Wong's budget statement, we have our three reporters, Aslam, Caitlin and Nicholas. They are standing ready with their expert guests to give their perspectives on the key initiatives from the government. But before we go to them, it's time for a quick break. We will return with more of what to expect from Budget 2026. Stay with us. With Prime Minister Lawrence Wong just arriving at Parliament House there, it won't be long before we find out about the government's spending plans for the year. We're counting down to Singapore Budget 2026 and we'll bring you that address live as it happens. Stay with us.
In the world of trade, it helps to be part of a network.
Well, not just any network, UOB's network.
The most extensive network in ASEAN.
Through this network, you can connect directly to my business.
And mine.
And mine.
And mine! With this network, you can source for supplies big
and small across supply chains.
And connect to sector specialists through 500 UOB offices globally.
With access to an end-to-end platform that syncs up your entire value chain.
For a complete view of your trade and cash position across borders on one single interface.
And that's what makes UOB the one bank for ASEAN.
It's where the region's most extensive trade network meets a truly integrated supply chain platform. And there's just one more thing to say. Be part of ASEAN's most extensive trade network.
The fourth industrial revolution is here, and AI could determine who gets ahead and who is left behind.
AI is very much a first world technology, making some of the richest companies in the world even richer.
Why is it hard for developing countries like Cambodia to close the gap?
Most farmers are not comfortable with AI chatbot or the text-based system.
We need AI developers, we need AI programmers, computer scientists, engineers.
And what's at stake if they cannot? Insight tonight on CNA.
With the uncertainties of the financial world, where does our economy truly stand? Keep up to date with the latest market trends and get the in-depth analysis that you need to understand the forces driving the global economies. Stay informed on the developments of the business world. Asia Business on Asia Tonight, weeknights on CNA. This segment is brought to you by Bee Ching Hyung, cherishing every moment, celebrating every reunion.
Our oceans are changing faster than ever.
Loss of biodiversity, increased pollution. It's not a good picture.
An oceanarium like ours bridges this gap between passive awareness and real-world action.
To remain credible over the long term, they have to go beyond the current standards.
What role can a modern oceanarium play? Watch Oceans of Change, Friday on CNA.
In support of marine conservation, brought to you by Singapore Oceanarium and Resorts World Sentosa.
A great night's sleep can make all the difference. It can be the difference between having dreams and making them come true. A great night's sleep, night after night after night. That is the difference. The difference is temper.
Welcome back. You're watching CNA's special coverage of Singapore Budget 2026. We are just a few minutes away from Finance Minister Lawrence Wong's budget speech for today. We'll bring that to you live here on CNA as well as on CNA 938. But first, let's get back to our guests here in studio. So, Selina, business competitiveness. This is a big one because it is likely to be front and centre, right, for the budget. The Prime Minister has spoken in the past about, and also our Gan Kim Yong has also spoken about business competitiveness for SMEs as well as MNCs to internationalise and so on. What are your hopes about the higher costs, you know, the tighter manpower situation, all the resource constraints, the main pain points that businesses have? How much support can be given that hasn't already been given in past budgets?
Yeah, so these are very familiar pain points. They are not new headwinds per se. There has been a lot of assistance programs to help, firms basically, automate, use better technology, become manpower lean, and of course to scale and expand overseas. So of course the question is what more can be done. I don't think this is about necessarily adding new grants or schemes per se, but it's to see really whether the existing schemes can they be enhanced. Are they really meeting the needs of the SMEs in particular? And I think it's not really just about throwing money, because for SMEs, a lot of time is about having the time and the ability to redesign their business model in order to take advantage of those tools and schemes.
I mean, and business redesign is no mean feat. It means going back to the drawing board and thinking about how you can allocate your resources in the best possible way.
That's right.
Without necessarily sort of piling onto the bill. Walter, even as the economy continues to keep growing like this, it only feels like progress if the jobs get better, as we were saying earlier. What should Budget 2026 sort of require or perhaps even reward so that job redesign becomes something that is attractive to SMEs?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about job redesign, I think the biggest challenge we have to think about is the fact that technology, AI, is going to come to all our businesses sooner or later, right? And I think the real danger here is, and Selina has talked about this arms race, I think to me the real danger is that this is a situation where the best actually get better. By that I mean that today it's the companies, it's the workers who are best positioned to adopt technology. They have already actually started to use it in the entire workflow process to make themselves even better. And if this continues on, what's going to happen is basically the ladder's going to get pulled up before our lagging companies, our lagging workers can actually catch up on this. So I think what we've got to do is think about these grants and incentives we have to actually tie them to basically job redesign. We have to try to reach out expressly to firms and workers who haven't actually benefited yet from technology. And we have to basically try to integrate this. So you've got to adopt technology as well as job support, as well as training support all at once. Otherwise, there might be job displacement or there might be a winner-takes-all problem here.
Perhaps there has been this sense as well, Selina, I want your take on this, a sense on the ground that in the past couple of years or so since we've had this AI story growing in Singapore, and it has certainly been permeating households and businesses, this idea that some workers simply don't have the talent or the time or the capacity to really understand or grasp what an AI economy really means?
Well, I think you have to move in stages. I mean, if you look at how Skills Future has evolved, a lot of the programs is really targeted at what I would call the kind of introductory 101 type of level courses. So after you take the 101 course, where is the 201 and the 301 courses that will come after that? Yeah. So I think, the training system also has to mature. And I think, Walter's right, we really have to tie it back to the productivity angle. It's good to take one course, but at the end of it, what do you have to show for it? Is it showing in your work outcomes? Are the firms benefiting? Yeah. If the firms are benefiting, how do they latch on to, pushing the workers to do further, deeper, courses? So I think it basically need the whole system to come together. It can't be just a once-off, I give you some Skills Future credits, you go pick a pet topic that you would like to study in, and then after that, that's the end of the story.
Perhaps it is also, Selina, Walter, that when it comes to the workplace, right, for years we've been talking about improving on our productivity. The AI economy, LLMs, GPT has kind of cancelled a lot of that out. It has provided the productivity, but not the humans behind it. And so the risk perhaps is that you've got an outpacing, right? You've got AI doing the work that humans can do. So the goal is get the humans to provide better quality or more a higher level sort of work. That's also a narrative that we've been told. How far do you think that's actually translated, though, in Singapore's economy in the past couple of years?
Well, I think it's, okay, so I think it's been a bit of a challenge because I think the question we have to decide on now is how can we actually best position our programs, our training and so on to help the workers who haven't quite caught up yet actually catch up to the leading edge. And I think there are a couple of lessons we actually have learned from research here. I think one is that adaptation is actually better than career conversion. I mean, last couple of years we were talking about we should help people convert to new careers and so on, but actually our workers already have very deep skills and experiences in many of their jobs. It's just that we want to combine their skills and experiences with the new technology to unlock new possibilities. The other area, I think, and we talked about, career conversion skills retraining here. Problem is that there's a moving target. Everybody is looking for the best job to retrain people into, but because technology is moving so fast, that target may have shifted already by the time you get there, by the time you finish a couple of months or even a couple of year training course. So I think we have to be much more agile. So that's really the challenge here. How do we embrace a more fast-moving, kind of policy and thinking about the problem?
Right. So we did a little, sort of cloud bubble. You'll see it on the screen over here of the main words that came up in ChatGPT for Budget 2025. You see the top 5 words there: support, workers, seniors, income, families. These words appeared more than most. A very clear sort of reference there to the main prerogatives that the Singapore government had in Budget 2025. Do you think that will change at all for, let's do a prediction, whether it will change for Budget 2026? What do you expect to see, Selina?
Well, I don't think so. I think what's underpinning, these keywords really is a bit of a chronic anxiety. And what really are they anxious about? It's about a good livelihood at the end of the day, right? So I think, the more noisy headlines we have about geopolitical tensions and about, fresh graduates not being hired, generally that kind of adds to the anxieties. I think some things won't change. The government will still have to strike a balance between some of the short-term needs and also, basically building capability for the longer-term future, and that really means having to future-proof both our industries and workers, because the last thing you want is to have a K-shaped economy, right? Walter mentioned, right, that some companies, the larger companies, MNCs, are better leveraged to take advantage of AI. Similarly, for society, you may have the more well-skilled, higher income workers who are embracing AI and they are getting ahead of the game, whereas those in the lower segments may find it very, very difficult to even figure out what this whole AI is about.
Yeah. Walter, to answer Selina's point there about broadening this understanding of it for the masses, what do you think needs to be done that hasn't already been done?
Okay, so I think at this point, a lot of people have a vague idea, at least, about what AI is. And a lot of people, and a much larger group, have actually tried it in some way. But I think one of the issues is, I think for a lot of us, we are accustomed to only seeing it as maybe a distraction or something to laugh at or something. I mean, there's so much AI-created memes and content out there. I think the challenge really is that there's this fine balance we have to strike between using AI for just entertainment or as a crutch. I mean, one example of using it as a crutch is, goodness knows my students use it all the time to try to answer their assignments as far as they can get away with it, right? But I mean, that's a crutch. What I want the students to do actually is I want them to use the AI tools to expand their capabilities far beyond what they could have done 5 or 10 years ago. Because at their fingertips today, they have a wonderful AI agent that can help them summarize the research literature on the topic, test out different hypotheses and theories, help them refine what they're doing to to answer the question. And I think if we bring that back to the general population, that's actually the key. How do we encourage people to use AI workflows or AI technologies more in their daily life in all ways to help them do their jobs better, to help them solve their own personal life issues and so on better? Not to rely on it to tell you what to do, but to help enable you better, to live the life you want better.
Selina, we began this AI strategy not too long ago, right? We talked about this whole of government sort of approach and what AI would mean. Were we late to the game at all, in your opinion?
I don't think we are late to the game. I think Singapore always has come from a position of advantage because we have fiscal resources and we are always forward-looking. But you know, looking at the whole AI, the amount of capex spent by all the, hyperscalers, etc., it's really an arms race, right? So the countries, the companies, the industries that are better positioned to take advantage of AI will probably continue to pull ahead. And the question, of course, for society is how do you bring the rest along?
Yes, exactly. I think it's what you said before. In a way, you have to begin this in waves or sort of in bites, slowly but surely, sort of bringing the population along. We're just waiting now, of course, for Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Wong to begin the budget speech. He is in Parliament House together with MPs gathered there today for today's address. Let's take you there live.
Speaker, I move that Parliament approves the financial policy of the government for the financial year 1st April 2026 to 31st March 2027. This is our first budget in this new term of government. It comes as we enter a post-SG60 phase in our nation-building journey. We begin this next phase at a time of profound global change. For nearly 8 decades, the world benefited from an international order that supported stability and economic cooperation. The system rested in large part on the leadership of the United States. It underwrote global security, championed open markets, and helped form the institutions and rules that enabled shared prosperity across the world, including here in Asia. That era has now come to an end. The US is reassessing and in some areas undoing key elements of the very system it once helped to build. Trade rules that were once promoted are being set aside. Global institutions are being bypassed, and long-standing norms are becoming less reliable. The cumulative effect is a weakening of the multilateral system. Countries everywhere have less confidence that common rules will protect their interests. As a result, more states are resorting to unilateral action, and some are becoming emboldened to do so. At the same time, the guardrails that once managed disputes and tensions are eroding. And so the world is becoming more contested, more fragmented, and ultimately more dangerous. Against this backdrop last year, there was widespread expectation that the US Liberation Day tariffs would trigger a sharp global slowdown. Fortunately, our worst fears did not materialize. Many firms adjusted quickly, front-loading production and imports to get ahead of the tariff measures. Subsequent trade deals, together with shifts in global supply chains, helped to reduce the actual impact of the tariffs. As a result, growth in the major economies held up, supported in part by strong investment in AI-related activities. In short, despite mounting stresses, the global economy proved more resilient than anticipated, and the international system continued to function. This year, however, we may not be so fortunate. Events in just the first month of 2026 have already been of exceptional scale and consequence. They have increased geopolitical tensions worldwide. As pressures build and the margin for error narrows, the resilience of the global system will be tested far more severely. There are also clear and growing signs of fragility in the global economy. Rising public debt in many major economies will strain financial stability and weigh on longer-term growth prospects. At the same time, heightened risk-taking in financial markets has pushed up asset valuations, leaving them vulnerable to abrupt corrupt corrections, and any such adjustment would dampen confidence and spill over into real economic activity. These external developments have a direct bearing on us. Last year, the resilience of the global economy, combined with our own economic strength, resulted in better than expected growth of 5%. Strong external demand boosted key industry clusters, including electronics and biomedical manufacturing. And these gains generated spillover across the broader economy. Some of the positive momentum will continue into this year, but amidst heightened global uncertainties, we expect a more moderate outlook for 2026. Growth is therefore projected at 2 to 4%, with inflation at 1 to 2%. Despite these uncertainties, we can move forward with confidence. Confidence grounded in fundamentals. Over the decades, we have systematically strengthened our economic foundations, deepening capabilities, investing in our people, and reshaping our industries as technologies evolve. We have built a reputation as a reliable and trusted hub, stable, secure, and well-governed. Qualities that businesses and investors have come to value highly, more so now than before, precisely because the world has become more fractured and uncertain. All these give Singapore an important and tangible competitive advantage. But past success alone will not carry us forward. In a profoundly changed world, standing still is not an option. We cannot wait for conditions to turn more favorable. Nor can we fall back on strategies designed for a previous era. We therefore have a full agenda in this term of government to refresh our strategies and strengthen our social compact. Budget 2026 is the first step in this effort to secure our future in a changed world. It lays the groundwork for how we will navigate our next phase of development together as one people. In this budget, we will advance our refreshed economic strategy, harness artificial intelligence as a strategic advantage, build a resilient and skilled workforce, give families more support and greater assurance, protect our security and sustainability, and renew and strengthen our Singapore spirit. And I will touch on each of these in turn. While our economy did well last year, some businesses continue to face cost pressures and operating challenges. We will support our businesses and help them stay competitive. I will provide a 40% corporate income tax rebate in the year of assessment 2026. Every active company that employed at least one local employee last year will receive a minimum benefit of $1,500. The total benefit for each company will be capped at $30,000. This will provide short-term relief as we press on with our restructuring and transformation efforts. Growth will be harder in this changed world. We must aim higher, move faster, and be prepared to take calculated risk. This is why the government convened the Economic Strategy Review. The ESR Committee shared their midterm update last month, and we will move decisively to act on their recommendations. Our ambition is to secure growth at the higher end of the 2 to 3% range over the next decade. But growth itself is not enough. Growth must translate into good jobs and rising incomes for Singaporeans. And let me share how we will achieve this. First, we must adapt and connect differently in a changed global environment. Some countries are turning inward, seeking to reduce their external dependence. But for Singapore, that is not an option. To prosper, we still need to be connected to the world, trading with others and integrating ourselves into global flows. Importantly, globalization has not ended. No country can succeed on its own. Most major products still depend on the global division of labor, combining expertise and materials from many countries, and on access to global markets to achieve scale. This fundamental reality has not changed. What has changed is globalization as we knew it. Economic flows are becoming more selective, partnerships more strategic, and resilience now matters as much as efficiency. So Singapore must adjust to these new patterns, staying open, but connecting in smarter, more diversified, and more resilient ways. And that's why we are forging new forms of cooperation with partners who share our commitment. Last year, we launched a Future of Investment and Trade Partnership, bringing together like-minded partners to cooperate in areas like technology, trade facilitation, and supply chain resilience. This month, the EU-Singapore Digital Trade Agreement entered into force, a landmark agreement with robust rules for digital trade. And later this year, we will sign a first-of-its-kind agreement on trade in essential supplies with New Zealand to ensure the continuity of critical trade flows between our two countries in times of crisis. We will also step up engagement with fast-growing markets, including in Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East. We will establish new embassies and strengthen our diplomatic and economic presence on the ground to take better advantage of emerging opportunities in these regions. Closer to home, we are working with our neighbors to deepen regional integration. This includes cooperating on projects like the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone and the Batam, Bintan, and Karimun Free Trade Zones in Indonesia. In short, we will redouble our efforts to diversify globally and to integrate regionally. But connectivity alone is not enough. It must translate into real opportunities that our businesses can capture and seize. Many companies, many Singapore companies are already doing this. One example is Rotary Engineering. It started in 1972 offering electrical installation services to oil refineries and petrochemical plants here in Singapore. But it did not confine itself to our domestic market. Over time, it built a leading presence in Southeast Asia, delivering energy infrastructure services. And now it's venturing further afield and deepening its presence in the Middle East. But doing business overseas is not easy, especially for smaller firms. Companies face unfamiliar regulations, different business practices, and intense local competition. And so we will do more to support companies as they venture abroad. We will enhance the support levels for grant schemes that support companies to internationalize, up to 70% for small and medium enterprises or SMEs, and up to 50% for non-SMEs. We will also enhance the Market Readiness Assistance Grant to support companies, not just to access new markets, but to deepen activities in existing overseas markets as well. Under the double tax deduction for internationalization scheme, companies automatically enjoy a 200% tax deduction for selected qualifying activities capped at $150,000. We will allow more qualifying activities to be eligible for such automatic tax deduction claims and raise the cap to $400,000. We will enhance the enterprise financing scheme by increasing the maximum loan quantum for trade and fixed asset loans. This will give companies more flexibility to cater to their different financing needs. And we will also provide more support for companies pursuing significant overseas ventures that require higher capital outlay. And the Minister for Trade and Industry will share more about these changes at the Committee of Supply. Second, we will build leadership in key growth clusters. And that means anchoring critical segments of global value chains here in Singapore, especially activities with high knowledge content and strong spillovers. Our goal is not just to host such activities, but to shape how these industries develop and where they create value. We are already doing this in some areas, like semiconductors. A key frontier in semiconductors is advanced packaging. Despite what the name suggests, advanced packaging, this is highly complex and technologically demanding. Traditionally, faster chips have been built by packing more transistors onto a single chip. But this is becoming more costly, and we are approaching physical limits. As a result, attention has shifted to advanced packaging, which integrates multiple chips into a single package using highly precise manufacturing technologies. And this delivers better performance and energy efficiency. As Singapore began investing in advanced packaging, R&D, more than 2 decades ago, well before it became a global priority. And these investments are now bearing fruit. They are one reason why major semiconductor companies continue to invest heavily in Singapore, not just in manufacturing, but also in R&D, innovation, and supply chain partnerships. We see a similar pattern in other key industries like aerospace and biomedical science. Technology is the critical enabler underpinning our strategy to build leadership in these clusters. Singapore must be a place where frontier technologies are developed, tested, and commercialized. And that's why we will invest $37 billion under the Research, Innovation and Enterprise, or RIE 2030 plan. This reflects our sustained commitment to research and innovation, amounting to around 1% of GDP each year. At the same time, we must be realistic. In absolute dollars, our public R&D spending will always be modest compared to the sums deployed by much larger economies. We cannot outspend them. Instead, our investments must be disciplined, focused, and strategic, directed at areas where Singapore has clear strengths and where our efforts can make a real difference. And there is potential in emerging areas like decarbonization solutions and quantum technology. In quantum, for example, we made an early and deliberate bet. In 2007, we established the Center for Quantum Technologies at NUS. Much of quantum research then was still theoretical, but we invested patiently in building foundational capabilities, believing that these would one day translate into transformative applications. That foresight is paying off. Today, quantum computing is moving rapidly from theory to reality, with far-reaching implications across many fields. The major technology players are investing heavily in capabilities to build commercial-scale quantum computers. And Singapore is attracting some of the best. Quantinuum, one of the world's leading quantum computer companies, has established operations here and will be hosting its latest quantum computer in Singapore, making us the first country outside America to host this system. This will give our researchers and companies, including a few homegrown startups, direct access to cutting-edge quantum compute and opportunities to work on meaningful projects. We are also attracting top global talent and partnerships. Nobel laureate Professor John Martinez, a pioneer in superconducting systems, co-founded a quantum computing startup, which is collaborating with our researchers at A*STAR and NUS. They are developing novel components to advance the performance of quantum computers using state-of-the-art semiconductor processes. They chose Singapore because of the unique combination of our strengths in advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and frontier quantum research. These examples show how we can build leadership in key growth areas and shape where innovation and value creation take place. In doing so, we strengthen Singapore's strategic resilience and relevance while creating more jobs and better opportunities for Singaporeans. Third, we will strengthen our enterprise ecosystem. Enterprise funding is a key part of this ecosystem. Over many years, we have worked steadily to strengthen this area. In venture and seed funding, we have made good progress. Compared to a decade ago, it is now much easier for startups to access early-stage capital. But many firms continue to face challenges at the growth stage. This is not unique to Singapore. Globally, growth stage capital has tightened. As a result, many firms, especially in deep tech, find it harder to raise the larger and longer-term funding that's needed to scale. We will therefore do more to catalyze growth capital in Singapore. Under the Startup SG Equity Scheme, the government provides initial capital to catalyze and crowd in private funding for promising startups. To date, the scheme has focused mainly on early-stage funding. We will now go further. I will set aside $1 billion to enhance Startup SG Equity and expand its scope to cover growth stage companies. Beyond this, we will take a more systemic approach to strengthening our growth capital ecosystem. We will convene a new work group led by Minister Chee Hong Tat, working closely with the industry to develop strategies to position Singapore as a leading center for growth capital. When enterprises are ready to list, we want them to see Singapore as their listing venue of choice. We had earlier set up the Anchor Fund to attract and anchor high-quality listings, and we are now seeing encouraging signs of renewed listing activity on the SGX. I will therefore launch a second 1.5 billion tranche of the Anchor Fund. As with the first tranche, this will be a co-investment between the government and Temasek. We will also continue to strengthen our broader equities market. Last year, MAS launched the Equity Market Development Program to develop our fund management industry and increase investor participation in Singapore equities. Industry response has been encouraging. MAS has allocated close to $4 billion to 9 asset managers. To build on this momentum, I will expand the program with a $1.5 billion top-up to the Financial Sector Development Fund. At the same time, we are implementing the other recommendations of the Equities Market Review Group. This includes streamlining listing rules and requirements to make it easier for high-growth companies to go public and establishing a dual listing bridge connecting the SGX and NASDAQ. These measures will enhance the depth and vibrancy of our public equities market and provide more pathways for enterprises to grow and scale from Singapore. Deep and vibrant markets are one part of the equation. We must also ensure a strong pipeline of high-quality companies that choose to build, grow, and anchor themselves in Singapore. Some will be locally grown enterprises, others will be promising enterprises from abroad. EDB has traditionally focused its investment promotion efforts on multinational enterprises. Going forward, it will step up efforts to attract high-growth companies with the potential to become future industry leaders. By anchoring such companies early, we can build new engines of growth and capture greater value for our economy as these enterprises grow and expand from Singapore. This comprehensive approach, from nurturing homegrown startups to catalyzing private capital and attracting promising global companies, will strengthen our enterprise ecosystem. It will enable companies of all sizes and at every stage of growth to access the capital and partnerships they need to succeed. And importantly, this will create more opportunities for Singaporeans to secure good jobs and grow their careers. In a changed world, a decisive factor for success will be how we harness new technologies, and foremost amongst them, artificial intelligence. AI is advancing at remarkable speed. We are reaching a stage where systems can write their own code and improve through iterative learning. The potential is immense to raise productivity, unlock new discoveries, and transform lives in ways that we are only beginning to understand. But with this promise comes deep, deep concerns. Workers worry that AI will displace jobs. Societies worry about misinformation, bias, and the ethical use of powerful technologies. These anxieties are real, and we must confront them squarely. But fear cannot be Singapore's response. If we allow uncertainty to paralyze us, we will fall behind in a world that is moving rapidly ahead. So we must act with clarity and resolve. AI is a powerful tool, but it is still a tool. It must serve our national interest and our people. We will define how AI is developed and used in Singapore. We will set clear rules to ensure it is applied responsibly and safely. And we will ensure that its benefits are shared widely across society. Harnessed well, AI will be a strategic advantage for Singapore. It can help us overcome our structural constraints, our limited natural resources, rapidly aging population, and tight labor market. To do this, we must invest deliberately and with discipline, not by simply following what others do, but by playing to Singapore's strengths. Our advantage does not lie in building the largest frontier models. It lies in deploying AI effectively, responsibly, and at speed. Singapore can be a trusted hub where companies and researchers come together to develop, test, and deploy impactful AI solutions, and do so faster and more coherently than many larger countries. This is already happening. Today, more than 60 firms, including Google and Microsoft, have set up AI centers of excellence here. And these investments have created a growing number of good jobs for Singaporeans in AI research, engineering, and deployment. But to fully realize AI's potential, we must go beyond individual pilots and isolated experiments. We must organize at the national level and move with speed and scale. We will therefore launch a new set of national AI missions. These missions will drive AI-led transformation in key sectors of our economy and push the boundaries of what is possible for Singapore and for the world. We will focus on 4 sectors: advanced manufacturing, connectivity, finance, and healthcare. For example, in advanced manufacturing, we aim to accelerate innovation and build best-in-class factories that can compete globally. In connectivity and logistics, AI can help to automate airport and seaport operations, move goods more efficiently, and strengthen Singapore's position as a leading global hub. These are not abstract aspirations. Each AI mission will be anchored in clear objectives and tangible outcomes. Delivering this will require us to work differently. We will review regulations and create sandboxes so that companies can test AI innovation safely and responsibly. Within the government, we will better align our R&D, regulatory, and investment promotion efforts so that agencies act in concert and pull in the same direction. All this will require a coordinated national effort. We will therefore establish a new National AI Council, which I will chair, to provide strategic direction and to drive Singapore's AI agenda. For AI to truly transform our economy, companies must also adopt it comprehensively. Many firms say they are using AI, but end-to-end transformation with AI is very demanding. It requires organizing data, rebuilding systems, redesigning processes and jobs, and retraining workers. Even the major global companies are grappling with this. But those that succeed will gain a decisive competitive advantage. A few leading Singapore companies like DBS and Grab are already moving decisively on AI transformation. We want to encourage more to do so. So we will launch a new Champions of AI program to support firms with the ambition to use AI to comprehensively transform their business. Support will be tailored to each company and will include enterprise transformation and workforce training. And as these companies succeed, they will set benchmarks for their industries and inspire others to follow. Beyond this, we will strengthen support for all enterprises, especially our SMEs, so they adopt AI and benefit from it in practical ways. We will build on the Enterprise Innovation Scheme, which provides businesses with 400% tax deductions on qualifying expenditures in activities like R&D, innovation, and capability development. We will expand the scheme to include AI expenditures as a qualifying activity for the years of assessment 2027 and 2028, capped at $50,000 per year of assessment. We will also strengthen our existing support schemes. The Productivity Solutions Grant, or PSG, already helps companies to adopt digital solutions. Increasingly, these solutions will be AI-enabled. Take Harry Ann's, an F&B company known for its freshly made Nyonya Kueh. It began in the 1940s, started by Madam Chia Nyok Eng, and later grew into a stall at Tiong Bahru Food Center. And in the 1980s, her son took over the business. Today, the third generation runs the company, and it has expanded to 8 cafes across Singapore. With support from the PSG, it adopted an AI-enabled restaurant management system to automate ordering and billing and streamline operations, serving customers faster and growing its revenues in the process. We will expand the PSG to support a wider range of digital and AI-enabled solutions so that every firm, regardless of size, can access tools that help them work smarter and compete more effectively. To build a vibrant AI-enabled economy, it helps to have a focal point, one that brings together AI founders, practitioners, researchers, and innovators, and catalyzes more collaborations and interactions. We have started a pilot initiative called Lorong AI. It's a dedicated co-working space that serves as a convening hub for our AI community. We will build on this pilot and establish a larger AI park at One North. This will be a new cluster to catalyze ideas, forge collaborations, and translate AI initiatives into practical solutions for businesses and public services. Just as we support enterprises, we must do the same and more for our workers. AI will change how we work. Some tasks will be automated. New roles will emerge. Many existing jobs will evolve. I know this creates real anxiety for workers. The pace of change can be unsettling, especially when livelihoods are at stake. But we will not allow technological change to come at the expense of our workers. We will press ahead with AI because we must. At the same time, we will put in place strong support to help our workers adapt and progress because we will take care of our own. The government will stand with our workers throughout this transition. No one will have to navigate the changes alone. We will help Singaporeans acquire new skills, adapt to new roles, and use AI as a tool to be more productive and effective at work. Where jobs are impacted, we will manage the transitions carefully and work closely with NTUC and our unions to help workers move into new areas and opportunities. Our commitment is clear. Every Singaporean who is willing to adapt and learn will continue to secure a good job and make a good living here in Singapore. To succeed in this new reality, we must prepare both our future workforce and those already working today. For the next generation, we will strengthen AI literacy for students across all our institutes of higher learning. But just as importantly, our IHLs will continue to emphasize strong foundations so that students learn to use AI wisely, not as a shortcut, and are equipped with rigorous thinking and deep disciplinary skills. At the workplace, we will help workers use AI to take over routine tasks so that they can focus their time and energy on higher value activities, work that requires judgment, creativity, and human insight, and that cannot be replaced by machines. Take accountancy as an example. Today, accountants can use AI to automate large parts of data consolidation, preparation, and bookkeeping. But this allows them to move up the value chain, spending more time on client advisory, forensic work, and complex analysis, where professional expertise and trust matter most. To support workers through this transition, we will help them build practical AI capabilities. And because AI is already reshaping many forms of white-collar and cognitive work, we will start with the accountancy and legal professions and progressively extend this to other fields. Beyond these specific sectors, every Singaporean can take the initiative to learn and pick up AI-related skills. Today, many AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Gemini are widely available and easy to use. For many, they are just smarter versions of a search engine. But there's much more to AI than just doing a search. With the right guidance and prompts, these tools can do a lot more, helping users analyze information, generate ideas, and solve problems. Using AI well requires learning, practice, and the right support. There is already a wide range of AI-related courses on the SkillsFuture website, from fully online options to part-time and full-time programs. But we know it's not always easy to navigate the options and identify what is most relevant. So we will redesign the SkillsFuture website to make AI learning pathways clearer and easier to access, so that Singaporeans can quickly find courses that match their work needs and proficiency levels. Learning must go beyond theory. It must translate into hands-on applications. While most AI tools are free at a basic level, access to more advanced models requires a paid subscription. To further encourage learning, we will provide Singaporeans who take up selected AI training courses 6 months of free access to premium AI tools. This will allow them to practice, experiment, and apply what they have learned. Several ministries, MDDI, MOE, MOM, and MTI are involved in these cross-cutting efforts, and the ministers will provide more details at the Committee of Supply. Sir, Singapore will not be passive in the face of rapid changes around us. We will adapt, we will compete, and we will continue to move forward with confidence. By harnessing AI as a strategic advantage, we will shape our own future and secure our place in this changed world. Singaporeans, and especially our workers, are at the center of everything we do. Ultimately, what matters is not just the policies we announce, but the outcomes they deliver in people's lives. And that is why we track results carefully and assess whether our efforts are making a real difference. Earlier this week, MOF released an occasional paper on income growth, inequality, and social mobility trends. It shows that over the past decade, we have made good progress, with broad-based wage increases and smaller income gaps. These improvements did not happen by chance. Left entirely to market forces, they would not have occurred on their own. Indeed, in many advanced economies, as growth slows, inequality becomes more entrenched. Singapore faces these same underlying pressures. That is why the government has and will continue to lean against these trends and strive to ensure that the fruits of growth are shared widely and fairly. Every Singaporean, regardless of where they start in life, should have a fair chance to pursue their aspirations and realize their full potential. So in this budget, we will continue to strengthen support for lower wage workers. The local qualifying salary, or LQS, sets the minimum salary that local employees must be paid in firms that hire foreign workers. We will raise the LQS for full-time local employees from $1,600 to $1,800. To help businesses defray some of the costs, we will enhance the Progressive Wage Credit Scheme, or the PWCS. We will raise the PWCS co-funding support for this year from 20% to 30%. We will also extend the PWCS for 2 more years to 2028. And from next year, we will raise the minimum wage increase to qualify for PWCS support from $100 to $200. This will better encourage and reward the firms that invest in their workers. These measures build on the progressive wage model, or the PWM, which we have developed together with NTUC and our tripartite partners. The PWM goes beyond a simple flat minimum wage and instead links pay increases to skills, productivity, and career progression. And it is delivering results. We will also continue to strengthen training support for the PWM. Last year, I announced additional support under the Workfare Skills Support for workers who take up long-form training courses. We will go further to enhance the basic tier of the scheme and increase the hourly allowance for workers who upgrade their skills. We will also do more to support lifelong learning for all Singaporeans through Skills Future. When we first started Skills Future more than a decade ago, the training landscape looked very different. At that time, our IHLs were still largely focused on pre-employment training. But we knew this was no longer sufficient. And that's why we set up Skills Future Singapore in 2016 under the Ministry of Education, to embed lifelong learning within our education system. Today, we have achieved this objective. Working adults at all stages of their careers can access a wide range of high-quality training options across our IHLs. All our autonomous universities, polytechnics, and ITE have internalized lifelong learning as part of their mission. For example, NUS and NTU, our two largest universities, have made lifelong learning an integral part of how they organize their teaching and learning. They offer flexible pathways for alumni and adult learners to take modular courses, earn stackable credits, and progressively build this into recognized qualifications. Singaporeans too are increasingly embracing lifelong learning. Last year, more than 600,000 individuals took up training with Skills Future support offered by IHLs and private training providers. While Skills Future Singapore under MOE focused on skills training, we also had Workforce Singapore under MOM to engage employers and help job seekers find jobs. Over the years, we have worked to strengthen coordination between these two agencies. But in an era of faster technological change and more frequent job transitions, stronger alignment is needed, and our systems must work more seamlessly together. Hence, the ESR committee had recommended that the government review how we organize jobs and skills support for Singaporeans. We have carefully considered this recommendation and will take a decisive step forward. We will merge Skills Future Singapore and Workforce Singapore into a new statutory board jointly overseen by MOE and MOM. This new agency will be a one-stop shop for skills training, career guidance, and job matching services. For workers and job seekers, that means support will be more seamless, from career planning to skills acquisitions and job matching and transitions. For employers, the support will be more integrated, covering workforce planning, job redesign, hiring, and workforce development. The Minister for Education and the Minister for Manpower will share more at the Committee of Supply. This goes beyond making an organizational change. It is about continually strengthening our system of lifelong learning and career support, so Singaporeans can adapt, grow, and realize their full potential. In a world where change is constant, we must remain a society that never stops learning and never stops striving to do better. We are also strengthening support for specific segments of our workforce. In 2024, we launched the Skills Future Level Up program to help mid-career workers undergo a skills reboot. The take-up has been encouraging. Over 60,000 Singaporeans aged 40 and above have already benefited from substantial training courses. Mr. Jeffrey Low is one of the many adult learners who has benefited from the program. After 18 years as an air steward, he was keen to reskill and pursue new opportunities aligned to his interests. So he enrolled in the Digital Product Management course at the Singapore Institute of Technology. Most of his course fees were offset by Skills Future subsidies and credits. He also received a mid-career training allowance during the 3-month course, which helped support his daily expenses while he trained. So now Jeffrey is doing well in a new role as a duty terminal manager with Changi Airport Group. We will continue to enhance the Level Up program. From next month, the mid-career training allowance will be extended to those who take up part-time training, not just full-time, but also part-time training. And we will also expand coverage to include more industry-relevant courses. Another important group is our senior workers. We will support our seniors so they can continue to contribute meaningfully. This includes helping them plan ahead for their later stage careers and supporting them in refreshing their skills. We will also equip employers to design age-friendly jobs and multi-generational workplaces. MOM has convened a tripartite work group on senior employment to study these issues comprehensively. Their recommendations will be released later this year. In the meantime, we will extend the senior employment credit to end 2027 to support employers who continue to employ senior workers. As we create better jobs and upskill Singaporeans, we must also remain open to global skills and talent. Foreign professionals and workers strengthen our teams, transfer knowledge, and enable companies to grow. And this in turn creates more and better opportunities for Singaporeans. At the same time, we will continue to ensure that our foreign workforce complements a strong Singaporean core. In line with this approach, we will refine and update our foreign worker policies to reflect evolving conditions. We will raise the Employment Pass or EP minimum qualifying salary for new applicants from $5,600 to $6,000 from January 2027. This maintains the quality of the EP holders as local wages rise. For the financial services sector, which has higher salary norms, we will raise the minimum qualifying salary from $6,200 to $6,600. The qualifying salaries for older EP applicants will be raised in tandem. For renewal applications, the changes will apply a year later in 2028 to give businesses more time to adjust. Likewise, we will raise the qualifying salaries for S-Pass holders. From January 2027, the minimum qualifying salary for new S-Pass applicants will be raised from $3,300 to $3,600. And for the financial services sector, this will be raised from $3,800 to $4,000. Qualifying salaries for older S-Pass applicants will be raised in tandem with renewal applications affected 1 year later from 2028. We will also adjust work permit levies. For the marine and process sectors, levies for basic skilled workers will be raised by $100 and $150 respectively. For the manufacturing and services sectors, we will simplify the current tiered levy structure, and the details are in the annex to the budget. To give businesses time to adjust, these changes will take effect from 2028, and the Minister for Manpower will share more at the Committee of Supply. The wide range of workforce measures I've outlined reflects Singapore's overall approach to stay open to skills and expertise that strengthen our economy while ensuring that Singaporeans remain firmly at the center of our workforce and our policies. We will help Singaporeans adapt to change with confidence, move across career transitions with assurance, and build meaningful and fulfilling careers. Sir, families are the bedrock of society and the first line of support for every individual. Through Forward Singapore, we have made significant moves in recent years to support Singaporeans and their families, from parents to seniors, caregivers, and persons with disabilities. We have also ramped up the supply of HDB flats to ensure that public housing remains accessible and affordable for couples and families. In this budget, we will make further moves to give families more support and greater assurance. Many young couples hope to become parents. We want to create the right conditions so they feel confident and ready to start a family. The decision to get married and have children is deeply personal. But for those who wish to take the step, the government will do more to support them along the way. One of the biggest concerns for young couples is the cost of raising a family. Over successive budgets, we have strengthened support to help parents manage these expenses. For example, we introduced a large family scheme to support families who have or aspire to have 3 or more children. For every third or subsequent child, the scheme will provide up to $16,000 in additional benefits. At last year's budget, we announced $500 in Child Life SG credits for each Singaporean child aged 12 and below to help their parents defray the day-to-day household expenses. This year, we will provide another $500 in Child Life SG credits to families for each Singaporean child aged 12 and below. We will continue to keep preschool and student care affordable to support the critical early years of a child's development. Over the years, we have reduced preschool fee caps and increased subsidies. Today, childcare fees for dual-income families are comparable to primary school and after-school student care fees. Lower and middle-income families also receive means-tested subsidies which further reduce out-of-pocket expenses. We will enhance these further. From the start of next year, we will extend means-tested preschool subsidies to more families by raising the monthly household income threshold to $15,000. This will benefit more than 60,000 families. Eligible parents, including those who previously qualified, can also receive more in infant care and childcare subsidies. We will also strengthen support for student care. We will raise the monthly household income threshold for student care fee assistance to $6,500 so that more families can qualify. And beyond these enhancements, we are undertaking a holistic review of the student care sector to study how to better meet the caregiving needs of families with primary school-aged children. We will continue to help lower-income families, especially those with young children, move towards greater stability, self-reliance, and social mobility. We take a family-centric approach to support such families. Under ComLink Plus, each family is paired with a dedicated family coach who works with them to develop personalized action plans and to coordinate support. To recognize and reinforce the family's own efforts, we introduced progress packages. These are more than financial assistance. They are a form of social contract, where family coaches work with the families to set clear goals, like securing a stable job, saving towards a home, or ensuring their children enroll in and attend preschool regularly. And when these milestones are achieved, the families receive additional payouts. Take Madam Hurul and Mr. Hafiz, for example. They had taken important steps on their own to stabilize their finances. What they needed was sustained guidance and support to keep moving forward. With support from their family coach and through their own hard work, they have made good progress over the past year. And through the progress packages, their financial circumstances have improved, and they are now closer to securing their own 4-room HDB flat. ComLink Plus is built around close and sustained support for families. It relies on dedicated family coaches, case workers from Family Services Center, and volunteer befrienders who work directly with families to help them make steady progress. Over time, we have strengthened our capabilities on the ground, and we are now ready to enhance the ComLink Plus progress packages. First, we will provide a new payout of $500 per quarter for all ComLink Plus families who make a commitment to work with family coaches and take active steps to make progress. Second, we will enhance the additional payouts that families receive when they make concrete progress in their goals of maintaining stable employment and good preschool attendance for their children. Third, we will provide more of these payouts in cash while continuing to set aside monies in their CPF accounts. This will help families meet immediate needs while also building their longer-term financial security. With these enhancements, a family with 2 children under ComLink Plus can receive around $10,000 per year in cash and CPF top-ups while their children are in preschool. And we hope this will provide them with the necessary support to stabilize their finances and secure a better life for themselves and their children. The Minister for Social and Family Development will provide more details of these changes at the Committee of Supply. We will also do more for persons with disabilities, as well as their families and caregivers. Minister of State Goh Pei Min is leading a task force to review how we can provide more meaningful support at different life stages for persons with disabilities and their families. This includes expanding capacity in community-based facilities, keeping services affordable, and supporting graduates of special education schools to secure meaningful employment and live well in the community. We look forward to the recommendations of the task force. Strengthening support for persons with disabilities is a key priority for the government and a shared responsibility for all of us. So the government stands ready to set aside additional resources to advance these efforts. As our population ages, we will also provide more support for our seniors so they can age with dignity, security, and peace of mind. We recently enhanced CareShield Life to provide higher payouts, giving seniors greater assurance against long-term care costs. We also increased CareShield Life premium subsidies to help cushion the impact of the higher premiums. I will top up the long-term care support fund by $400 million to fund the additional subsidies. With longer lifespans, retirement adequacy is another major concern for many Singaporeans. Our aim is clear. Singaporeans who work and contribute to CPF consistently should be able to meet their basic retirement needs with confidence. And over the years, we have enhanced the CPF system to achieve this. We introduced silver support to uplift seniors with less means, and the modular package to give additional assurance to our young seniors as they approach retirement. In this budget, we will take further steps to strengthen retirement supports. First, we will provide a CPF top-up of up to $1,500 for Singaporeans aged 50 and above, and with CPF retirement savings below the basic retirement sum. Those with lower balances will receive larger top-ups so that support is targeted at where it is most needed. Second, we will proceed with the next step of planned CPF contribution rate increases for senior workers in 2027. This will help older workers build up their retirement savings in their later working years. The government will also continue to provide the CPF transition offset to employers, covering half of the increase in employer contributions for 2027. Third, we will offer more investment options for CPF members who wish to grow their savings further. Today, the CPF system provides stable, risk-free interest rates to help Singaporeans build up their retirement nest egg. With the extra interest that CPF offers, CPF members can earn up to 6% per annum risk-free on their CPF balances. Some CPF members, especially those with a longer runway to retirement, are prepared to take more risk to generate potentially higher returns. But experience shows that most people do not do well picking and trading individual stocks. It is very hard to beat the market consistently. For retail investors, a more sensible approach is broad and diversified exposure through low-cost funds. But even then, risks remain, because some may invest when the markets are high and retire during a downturn, precisely when they need their savings. And that's why the CPF advisory panel earlier recommended introducing a lifetime retirement investment scheme. This is essentially a life cycle investment approach with a predefined glide path to retirement. In other words, members take on more risk with greater exposure to equities when they are younger, and their investments are automatically rebalanced towards safer assets as they approach retirement. We studied this recommendation carefully. Currently, such life cycle investment products are available in the market, but they have traditionally come with high fees. So rather than leave this entirely to the market, the government will help shape and develop such products under a new scheme for CPF members. Later this year, CPF board will engage the industry and invite expressions of interest from potential providers. A key requirement will be that the fees are kept low. We will select 2 to 3 credible providers to keep choices simple for members. The government will also be prepared, in principle, to provide some time-limited support to kickstart the scheme. Participation in the new investment scheme will be voluntary. CPF members can choose whether to opt in. At the same time, we will strengthen efforts to help members understand whether this option is suitable for them, in particular for members who are younger and have a longer runway to retirement and who can better ride out short-term market fluctuations. I've set out the broad framework today, but there are still many details to work out, and MOM and CPF board will share more when ready. The government will continue to do whatever is necessary to help Singaporeans manage cost pressures for as long as it is needed. Although inflation has eased in recent years, we know that many Singaporeans still face anxieties and pressures. So we will continue to provide additional support this year. First, I will provide a cost of living special payment comprising $200 to $400 in cash to Singaporean adults earning up to $100,000 in assessable income and who do not own more than one property. Second, there will be additional USAVE rebates to help households with their utilities expenses. Eligible HDB households will receive 1.5 times the regular amount of USAVE rebates, or up to $570 this financial year. Third, I will provide another $500 in CDC vouchers. This will be for all Singaporean households in January 2027. Similar to previous rounds of CDC vouchers, half can be used at participating supermarkets, while the other half can be used at participating heartland merchants and hawkers. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to review and enhance our social support system across education, housing, healthcare, and retirement, and for different groups, be it families, parents, seniors, persons with disabilities, or caregivers. We will keep working at this steadily and responsibly so that Singapore remains an inclusive and united society and a place that we are all proud to call home. Next, let me touch on our security challenges as well as our longer-term sustainability concerns. The world has never been free of conflict, but in recent years it has become more dangerous. In 2024 alone, there were 61 state-based armed conflicts worldwide, the highest number recorded since the Second World War. The conflicts are not confined to distant regions. Closer to home, we witnessed one of the most serious armed clashes involving ASEAN member states in years. A long-standing border dispute between Cambodia and Thailand escalated into an open military confrontation. Drones, rocket launchers, and even fighter jets were deployed. Civilians were wounded, displaced, and lives were lost. These developments are deeply troubling. They reflect a shrinking space for negotiation, a greater willingness to use force, and a higher risk of miscalculation, with consequences that can easily spill across borders. History has taught us a hard lesson. No one will come to our rescue if Singapore faces a crisis. We alone are responsible for our defense and survival. And that's why we must stay vigilant and be prepared for a wider range of security challenges and threats. Since independence, we have invested steadily to safeguard Singapore's peace and stability. That's allowed us to adopt new technologies and build credible and strong capabilities in both the SAF and the home team. The recent conflicts we see around us underscored how the nature of warfare is changing. Unmanned area systems are now a common feature of modern conflict. They are used not only for surveillance, but also for precision strikes, electronic warfare, and coordinated operations. Drones are cheaper, more accessible, and increasingly sophisticated, allowing even smaller actors to project force in new ways. We will study these developments carefully. We will invest decisively in capabilities that are essential to Singapore's defense. And that includes strengthening our ability to deploy, counter, and operate alongside unmanned systems across all domains. Beyond the physical battlefield, the digital domain has emerged as an increasingly contested arena. We are seeing a sharp rise in attacks by both state-sponsored and non-state actors in cyberspace. They range from scams targeting individuals to highly sophisticated attacks on critical information systems. Singapore is an attractive target. We have faced attacks from malicious cyber actors, including hostile information campaigns and deliberate attempts to undermine our national security. Over the years, we have strengthened our defenses. We established the Cybersecurity Agency, built expertise within the Home Team Science and Technology Agency, and stood up the Digital and Intelligence Service in the SAF. These efforts have enabled us to detect, disrupt, and fend off many attacks. But the threat landscape continues to evolve, with attacks becoming more frequent, more coordinated, and more sophisticated. We will therefore continue to strengthen our cybersecurity posture by deepening capabilities, improving coordination across agencies, and better safeguarding our most critical systems. It is also no longer sufficient to defend government systems alone. Many private sector companies play a critical role in delivering essential services, and their systems are likewise vulnerable. The attackers often exploit smaller or less protected companies as weak links to gain access to larger systems and cause widespread disruption. Yet many companies lack the resources or the expertise to deal with these advanced cyber threats. So we will deepen partnerships with industry, especially owners of critical information systems, to improve our preparedness and strengthen our collective cyber defense. All this underscores the importance of sustained investments in our security. For now, we expect to keep defense spending at about 3% of GDP. But we are prepared to spend more if the need arises. Importantly, our security effort goes beyond MINDEF alone. It also includes investments in the security of our critical infrastructure and in the home team. Taken together, we expect overall security-related expenditures to rise in the coming years to keep Singapore safe and secure in a far more complex threat environment. Beyond immediate security threats, we must also confront a longer-term challenge to Singapore, and that's the growing impact of climate change. We are already feeling its effects: higher temperatures, heavier rainfall, and more frequent extreme weather events. Unfortunately, global momentum on climate action has slowed. At the 30th Conference of the Parties in Brazil last November, countries were unable to agree on concrete decarbonization roadmaps. At around the same time, last year, the International Maritime Organization delayed adoption of its net zero framework because member states could not reach consensus. Some governments are scaling back their climate ambitions. But for Singapore, retreating from action is not an option. We will continue to do our part, not only to address climate risk, but also to secure our longer-term resilience and competitiveness. A key pillar of our climate strategy is the carbon tax. It sends a clear price signal to encourage emissions reductions. This is already having an impact. Firms are investing more in low-carbon solutions and improving energy efficiency. We had earlier announced our carbon tax trajectory for this decade. The tax has just been raised to $45 per tonne for this year and next, and the plan is to reach $50 to $80 per tonne by 2030. For HDB households, the additional USAVE rebates that I highlighted earlier will help to cushion the impact of the carbon tax. For businesses, we will extend the energy efficiency grant and support for green loans under the Enterprise Financing Scheme. This will help firms invest in energy efficient and sustainable solutions. While Singapore will continue to contribute responsibly to climate action, we recognize that our actions alone cannot determine global outcomes. We will therefore calibrate our moves cautiously, doing our part to reduce emissions as a responsible global citizen, while taking into account what other countries are doing in order not to put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage. So beyond 2027, we are assessing Singapore's carbon tax trajectory carefully in light of international developments. Singapore already has the highest carbon tax rate in the whole of Asia. If global climate momentum continues to weaken, we may need to position ourselves towards the lower end of the $50 to $80 per ton range by 2030. Looking further ahead, our path to net zero will depend heavily on technological breakthroughs and sustained international cooperation. Without these, it will be increasingly difficult for a small resource country like Singapore to move further on our own. The progress of our transition to net zero may therefore be uneven, but our efforts will be credible, forward-looking, and aligned with global realities. And even amidst these uncertainties, we continue to make concrete progress. For example, on clean energy, our sustained push to expand solar deployment is delivering results. We have reached our 2030 solar deployment target of 2 gigawatt peak ahead of schedule. We will therefore raise the target to 3 gigawatt peak by 2030. Beyond that, we will continue to maximize solar deployment across all viable surfaces and progressively set more ambitious targets further into the future. We are also advancing plans to import low-carbon electricity from the region. They are at various stages of development. While not all will materialize, those that do will help to reduce our carbon footprint and strengthen our energy resilience. Importantly, we are actively pursuing possibilities to further diversify our energy mix, be it through hydrogen, geothermal energy, or civilian nuclear power. We are building up capabilities in nuclear energy to be able to assess its safety and viability for Singapore. We have initiated cooperation with the US and France and are discussing similar arrangements with other partners like South Korea. In transport, we remain committed to achieving 100% cleaner vehicles by 2040. Incentives are in place to encourage early adoption of electric vehicles, and charging infrastructure is being expanded nationwide. We are also greening our aviation and maritime sectors. In aviation, we are supporting demand for sustainable aviation fuel with a target of 1% sustainable fuel use for flights departing Singapore this year. In shipping, we are partnering industry to develop a low-carbon ammonia bunkering solution on Jurong Island. If successful, Singapore will be amongst the first countries in the world to supply ammonia commercially as a fuel for international shipping. Sir, the years ahead will be beset by uncertainties, from geopolitical tensions to cyber threats and climate risk. We will face these challenges squarely and overcome them one by one. And that's how we will move forward steadily and decisively to build a safer and more sustainable home for generations to come. Singapore's greatest strength lies not just in our policies and plans, but in the spirit of our people. Time and again, we have defied the odds, not by chance, but by standing together as one people, especially in our most testing moments, whether it be separation or financial crisis, or the current geopolitical uncertainties. Around the world, we see growing polarization and a tendency for groups to turn on each other. Many societies are becoming more divided and more ungovernable. We cannot let this happen in Singapore. And so in this budget, we will continue to invest in renewing and strengthening the bonds that bind us. Our shared bonds are strong today, but they were not formed overnight, nor by chance. They were built patiently and deliberately, generation after generation. Our arts and heritage play a vital role in this journey. They help us understand where we came from, express who we are today, and imagine who we can become as a people. Multiculturalism is a defining part of our identity. We cherish and embrace our distinct cultural traditions and heritage, even as we continue to build common ground and a shared identity that unites us as Singaporeans. Our cultural and heritage institutions embody this approach, celebrating the richness of each community while expressing our distinctive Singaporean identity. We will continue to strengthen these institutions. We will open the revamped Malay Heritage Centre later this year. We will work with the Singapore Chinese Cultural Centre to expand its reach and engagement. The Indian Heritage Centre just marked its 10th anniversary, and we will provide further support to enhance its outreach and programming. Sport is another powerful force that brings Singaporeans together. Through sport, we learn resilience, teamwork, and the determination to press on even when the odds are stacked against us. We will continue to roll out the Sports Facilities Master Plan so that Singaporeans can more easily access affordable and quality sports facilities. In the coming years, we will open the new Punggol Regional Sports Centre, the Toa Payoh Integrated Development, sport facilities in Farrer Park and Tengah, as well as revamped sports centres in Hougang and Queenstown. We will also expand the dual use scheme so that Singaporeans can conveniently access sports facilities in schools. And we will complement these facilities with more sports programming, bringing Singaporeans of all ages and abilities together through shared participation. On the foundation of our shared bonds, we must continue to nurture a strong sense of solidarity. We see this in giving, volunteering, and everyday acts of kindness. These actions break down barriers, draw us closer, and remind us that we are all in this together. They form the foundation of a we-first society. The government will do our part to encourage and support this. Today, we provide 250% tax deductions for qualifying donations to institutions of a public character, or IPCs, and eligible institutions. We will extend this scheme for another 3 years until end 2029. Beyond financial contributions, many Singaporeans give something equally valuable, their time and skills through volunteering. This spirit of giving can be strengthened when companies make it easier for their employees to serve the community. And that's why MCCY and the National Council of Social Service have been working closely with professional groups and industry bodies to encourage businesses to integrate giving, volunteering, and socially responsible practices into their operations. To support these efforts, the government earlier introduced a corporate volunteer scheme, which provides 250% tax deductions when employees volunteer or are seconded to IPCs. We will extend this corporate volunteer scheme for another 3 years until end 2029. Singaporeans also contribute by starting ground-up initiatives to meet community needs. The government supports such efforts through the Our Singapore Fund. Since its introduction in 2016, the fund has supported over 800 ground-up projects from community building and sports to municipal and digital readiness initiatives. One example is Little Hands, Big Hearts SG. It's an initiative by Kaizen and Kay, aged 7 and 9, together with their parents, to involve others in monthly community service projects. Their first project focused on fire safety awareness. They designed a poster and worked with the Nee Soon Town Council to display it at HDB lift lobbies. They also brought other children and their families to visit Yishun Fire Station, where they presented care packs and handmade gifts to the officers on duty. They have more projects in the pipeline, from a beach cleanup and support for seniors to donating school supplies to children and writing appreciation cards to our migrant workers. It's a wonderful example that shows anyone, no matter how young, can step up to make a difference. Last year alone, the Our Singapore Fund received more than 250 applications. At the same time, we've heard feedback on how the fund can be improved, including the need for larger grant amounts, longer funding horizons, and broader eligibility. So we will launch a new $50 million SG Partnerships Fund. This is to catalyze ground-up initiatives and help them build sustained capabilities and impact. The new fund will provide differentiated tiers of funding over different time frames, including grants of up to $1 million for larger multi-year projects. We will also continue to partner our youth and open up more avenues for them to shape Singapore's future. Youth panels have enabled young Singaporeans to work with the government on issues that matter to them. In the first round, 120 youths contributed across 4 panels. We will launch the next round of youth panels later this year, enabling more young people to step forward and make a difference. The Acting Minister for Culture, Community and Youth will share more details on these initiatives at the Committee of Supply. Sir, our forefathers understood that Singapore's success will ultimately depend on unity, not just shared prosperity, but also shared responsibility. This conviction is captured in our pledge, which begins with "we" and affirms that we are one united people. That sense of togetherness has carried us through uncertainty and brought us this far. If we continue to invest in one another, strengthening our bonds, looking out for those around us, and putting the common good first, we can face the future with confidence and build a Singapore that endures and thrives. Now let me touch on our fiscal position. Our prudent fiscal approach remains one of Singapore's core strengths. We manage our public finances with discipline and care, ensuring that revenues are sufficient to meet expenditures and that every dollar is used responsibly for the benefit of both present and future generations. The changes we made in the last term of government have put Singapore on a healthy and sound fiscal footing. We have a tax and transfer system that is fair, progressive, and anchored on shared responsibility. And that gives us the capability and the confidence to move forward. This year, I will adjust vehicle taxes. Currently, car buyers are taxed through the additional registration fee. To encourage timely renewal of the vehicle population so that it is safer and less pollutive, we provide a preferential additional registration fee or PAF rebate for cars deregistered by their 10th year. This is sized as a percentage of the additional registration fee paid. Electric vehicles are less pollutive than conventional petrol cars. And as EVs become more common, the need to encourage early deregistration through PAF rebate is reduced. Therefore, I will reduce the PAF rebate by 45 percentage points. I will also lower the PAF rebate cap from $60,000 to $30,000. And this will apply to all cars registered with certificates of entitlement obtained from the next bidding exercise. Next, to discourage the consumption of tobacco products, I will implement a 20% increase in tobacco excise duty across all tobacco products with effect from today. The details of these tax changes are in the annex. So let me summarize our fiscal position. For financial year 2025, we expect higher revenues. This is partly due to the better-than-expected economic performance, which I shared earlier. Another key driver is the increase in our corporate income tax collections. In financial year 2024, corporate income tax contributed 4% of GDP, and that was significantly higher than in past years. I talked about this in our last budget. Based on the latest estimates, we expect corporate income tax collections to increase further in FY 2025. We also saw higher asset-related revenue collections, such as vehicle quota premiums and stamp duty driven by strong demand for private vehicles and properties. Therefore, I expect to end FY 2025 with a surplus of $15.1 billion or 1.9% of GDP. For FY 2026, I expect a smaller surplus of $8.5 billion or 1% of GDP. Our approach remains to keep the budget balanced over time and across the ups and downs of the economic cycle. Looking beyond this budget, our public finances remain sound and resilient. On the revenue side, we will proceed with the implementation of the top-up tax under Pillar 2 of BEPS. This will raise the effective tax rate for large multinational enterprises operating in Singapore to 15%. So we expect higher corporate tax collections from FY 2027 onwards. At the same time, our spending needs will grow across multiple fronts. First, on external relations and security, we will need to invest more in expanding our overseas partnerships and in building up deeper capabilities to keep Singapore safe and prepared for emerging threats. Second, on the economic front, even with the BEPS initiative, many other countries are rolling out generous incentives to reshore and onshore major investments. That is the reality of today's competitive landscape. To remain attractive and stay in the game, we must update and strengthen our investment promotion toolkit. And that's one reason why MTI's expenditure has risen sharply in this budget and why it is likely to remain elevated in the years ahead. Third, on social needs, we had anticipated higher spending for healthcare and provided for it through the GST rate increase. But healthcare is not the only social need we must address. We also need to strengthen assurance for families, enhance social mobility, and boost retirement adequacy so that Singaporeans can face each stage of life with confidence and peace of mind. And finally, we must prepare for longer-term challenges. We have set aside resources through specific funds for major future needs, including critical infrastructure investments for our energy transition and coastal protection. And in this budget, we will make further top-ups to the relevant funds to support the development of Changi Airport, as well as our longer-term economic strategies. We therefore expect both revenues and expenditures to continue rising. The government will manage this increase carefully, ensuring that spending remains supported by revenues and consistent with our objective of maintaining a balanced budget over the medium term. Sir, our sound public finances give us the ability to act decisively and to invest where it matters most. This puts Singapore in a very different position from many other countries where governments are constrained by debt and deficit pressures and forced into difficult trade-offs over what to cut. In contrast, we begin this term of government in Singapore on a firm fiscal footing. We are therefore able to invest meaningfully and responsibly in policies and programs that benefit all Singaporeans now and in the years ahead. Mr. Speaker, Singapore has come a long way from its humble and tumultuous beginnings. I recently visited an exhibition at the National Gallery organized by the Founders Memorial. It takes us back to Singapore in the 1950s to the 70s and traces how our pioneers forged a shared identity amid diversity and uncertainty. One display revisits the Aneka Ragam Rakyat, or the People's Cultural Concerts, organized by the then Ministry of Culture shortly after we attained self-government. At one of these concerts, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew addressed the crowd and described Singaporeans as, quote, not mere spectators, but active participants in building a nation that belonged to all. Indeed, Singapore has come so far only because generations of Singaporeans stepped forward. They took responsibility, contributed what they could, and did their part to shape our collective future. That same spirit is alive today, especially amongst our youths. Take, for example, Ayuni Noor Izanti Muhammad Zuraimi. Ayuni discovered her passion for volunteering at 15. Together with 4 friends, she started a non-profit called Youth Can Do It. It connects youths with volunteer opportunities across different organizations via Telegram. Now 19 and studying medical biotechnology at Temasek Poly, she continues to volunteer regularly with her friends, tutoring primary school students from disadvantaged families and cleaning the homes of senior citizens. There is also Shantini, daughter of Subramaniam. From a young age, Shantini helped care for her brother, who has cerebral palsy and relies on a motorized wheelchair. And that experience instilled in her a deep commitment to serve others. At just 11, she began volunteering at the Sri Narayana Mission Nursing Home. Today, at 23 and studying nursing at NUS, she leads the operations for Project Caring Hearts, a volunteer initiative that supports palliative patients through befriending programs and community outreach. Then there is Joseph Tan Kai Heng. He first became active in community service while studying electrical engineering at ITE College West, volunteering with the Hardware Network. 2 years ago, he joined a nonprofit group as a volunteer to teach migrant workers digital skills. Now 19 and a computer engineering student at Singapore Poly, he remains deeply committed to this cause, driven by his belief that migrant workers who have contributed so much to Singapore's development also deserve opportunities to upskill and progress. These stories differ in form, but they are united in spirit. They remind us that nation building has never been the work of a few or of one generation alone. It is the cumulative effort of ordinary Singaporeans, Singaporeans who choose in their own ways to step forward and make a difference. Today, this sense of shared responsibility matters more than ever. We cannot afford to be mere spectators. We must be active participants, looking out for one another, strengthening our social bonds, and contributing to a Singapore that belongs to all of us. This is the conviction that underpins Budget 2026. It is a budget to support Singaporeans today, prepare our society for tomorrow, and enable us to navigate this changed world with confidence. Together, we will secure a stronger, fairer, and brighter future for all. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
That Parliament approves the financial policy of the government for the financial year 1st April 2026 to 31st March 2027. In accordance with paragraph 1 of Standing Order number 89, the debate now stands adjourned. Debate to be resumed on what day, Prime Minister?
Tuesday, 24 February, sir.
So be it. Leader.
You've just been listening there to the budget speech delivered in Parliament by Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Now, in his address, he spoke about preparing Singapore for a changed and more uncertain world while helping households manage today's pressures. Now, the budget rolls out broad cost of living support, including cash payouts, CDC vouchers again for every household, as well as utilities rebates and for eligible HDB families. Now, there is also a very strong focus on seniors with CPF and Medisave top-ups and measures to support older workers who want to stay employed. Now, for lower wage and mid-career workers, enhancements to wage and training support, they aim to strengthen pay and job resilience. Now, alongside household relief, what we heard today, the budget signals a push to strengthen Singapore's competitiveness, helping businesses adopt AI and upgrade skills so that firms can move from experimentation to real deployment. Now, overall, it's a budget focused on steadying Singapore families today and positioning Singapore for a more technology-driven future. So let's return back to my guest here in studio, Selina Ling, Chief Economist and Head of Group Research at OCBC, as well as Walter Teixeira, Associate Professor at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. First off, the first impressions from both of you. What is your sense about the weight and the focus of this year's budget? Selina, first to you.
Okay, so I think PM Wong actually did hit a lot of high notes, but what really stood out for me was how much airtime actually went into the whole AI ambition. I think if you had to do a cloud word search, I think AI would feature very, very heavily in this budget speech. And I think, basically for the whole AI is about a whole ecosystem, infrastructure approach. It's also about talent building, about getting all the individual workers and also the smaller players, SMEs, to be on board this bandwagon as well. So it's really a transformational platform, I think. And I think Singapore really has the strong fiscal position to actually support a lot of these initiatives that are putting in place for budget. It's not just the AI, but the 37 billion that's going to be committed under the RIE 2030, and looking at the fiscal surplus that we registered for FY25, at 1.9% of GDP, that's even higher than my estimate of 1.6%. And even for 2026 budget as well, we're looking for another 1% of GDP surplus. And given how buoyant, growth was last year, I would think that we have a good chance of even exceeding that again.
Yeah, a significant commitment of spending. Walter, your first thoughts on the budget?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was all about getting ahead of the curve, because I think there was a broad recognition in the budget that if we stand still, if we just pump out the same kind of budget we've been doing over the last couple of years, there's a real risk that Singapore is going to get overtaken by events, right? Going to get overtaken by changes in AI and how that changes businesses in the future of work, or get overtaken by these changes in the global supply chain, which are coming about by the changed world we're living in. So that's why I think I would pay attention, of course, to the AI, to all these announcements of how the government is taking it very seriously, pumping more money in, supporting businesses and workers. But also, I think there's support for businesses to further internationalize, to get ahead of some of these changes in global supply chain and politics. So I think it's all about getting ahead of the curve for Singaporeans.
Right. So I think we have Nicholas ready for us. Nicholas is joining us from AI Singapore. He is with the research director there, Brian Lowe. Nicholas.
Yes, Dawn. So, as you said, I am here at AI Singapore with the director. And as we were listening to the speech, he sat up and paid really close attention to when Prime Minister Wong spoke about having a national strategy for AI and a national council. So, Professor Brian, when you heard this line from the Prime Minister, why did you pay such close attention to it?
It's because I was thinking about what he would be saying on the talents, on grooming and nurturing the talents in Singapore for AI. I do believe that for talents, there will be two sectors that we need to pay attention to. One would be deep skilling. This can be done through AI Singapore's AI apprenticeship program, right, where they are training AI folks that are ready for the workforce. Now, the other sector would be those folks that are focusing on deep research. And by doing that, this will prove to the world that we are serious in AI and at the frontier of AI research.
And when you talk about deep research, you mean to say technologies that are at the forefront of AI, not the ChatGPT level where someone just interacts with it, but far beyond that?
That's right. Because in order to do this kind of deep research, not just do you have to use it, you have to understand what's going on in the backbone. And because of that, it allows you to improve on these AI models and create knowledge out of it.
What's the value of having this in Singapore? Because over the last year, for example, we've had interest from Microsoft, for example, they set up an AI hub in Singapore. Does having this level of research talent from our local population matter in having these AI powerhouses coming to Singapore?
Yes, it's because, in the global stage, we really wanted the rest of the world to know that we are very serious in AI. And because of that, one of the instances would be the fact that these big techs like Google DeepMind or MSRA, they are coming to Singapore. Now, for them to want to come to Singapore, we need the ones with AI research talents, right? These are the ones that they are paying attention to for them to be able to help within the companies.
Thank you very much, Professor. I hope that answers the question, Don.
All right, thank you very much, Nicholas. Thank you, and also Associate Professor Brian Lowe there with that. I want to pick up on what Brian was talking about with this deepening research talent in Singapore, the value of that. Of course, we have seen that there has been this global sort of race for AI talent. Walter, you were talking about this earlier on, about having this broader, deeper understanding, the value of that. Your take on what Associate Professor Brian Lowe commented.
So I think what's interesting about his comments is that I think it paints a vision for how AI can actually help to enable job transformation, also improve jobs actually across the spectrum. Because I think the first thing he talked about was how you might have a broader base of people who have the skills to use AI in the job to improve productivity, but they may not necessarily be the leading edge AI talents, right? And then he pivoted into talking about how we need to develop AI research capabilities. That is where you're getting into much more deep capabilities, much more high-skilled workers and so on. And I think that's the area where you really need actually that agglomeration economy or that cluster of leading-edge AI businesses in Singapore, because that attracts the best talent to Singapore. I mean, today, I think the issue is if you don't have that, they would prefer to go to the places where there's already an established cluster like Silicon Valley, because that's where they get the most new ideas, the most returns to their human capital. So we need to shift at least some of that business in targeted areas to Singapore to catalyze that, to bring in the talents to Singapore, complement our own talent, of course, do the local training talent pipeline and talent development as well.
Yeah, because it would suggest an already more developed ecosystem as far as AI and AI research is concerned. Selena, I want to get your take on this, because we're not just talking about adopting new technology here. We're talking about a much deeper sort of immersion into the AI sphere. The Prime Minister is chairing, according to the new National AI Council, right? What does that level of political leadership signal to you about how urgent and strategic AI has become for Singapore and Singaporeans?
Well, I always liken the whole AI spending capex boom as a bit of an arms race. So I think the choice of language is interesting, because now it's a AI mission. You know, mission kind of like brings to mind is mission critical. You know, basically you're tying the growth impetus to the whole AI story. So the elevation, you know, beyond the task force to having the Prime Minister chair the council, I think, tells you that it's a very strong strategic signal that, you know, the whole of nation has to be involved in this, starting from education to workforce training, to attracting the talent, you know, building the business capabilities and having that whole virtuous effect that will be driving growth in the medium term. So it's really very much about capacity building.
Yeah, it's gone beyond hype, and it's about AI at scale, the center of gravity almost of what Budget 2026 was about. Well, thank you for your insights, but stay with us. We're going to come back to you for more, but now for the latest reactions to the budget speech from Parliament House. We'll get to our reporter Nadira Zaidi. She is there. Nadira, you have been following what was expected from this budget speech. What stood out to you?
Thanks, Dawn. So I must highlight that the support for businesses to internationalize really stood out for me, because I've been speaking to businesses and a lot of them have plans or have the intention to venture abroad. But as you would know, there are some barriers. Unlike the MNCs, a lot of these small businesses require further financial support and guidance. So the enhancements of the grants from 50 to 70% is definitely a positive move. Another point to note is also the removal of the new to target market or overseas market criteria, which definitely makes it easier for some of these small businesses to tap into these grants. Now joining me is the MP for Jalan Besar, Sean Low. He was also the budget director in the last two budgets, including the national SG60 budget last year, and he also helped to oversee the development of schemes like the CDC vouchers. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Low. So this is the first budget in the new term of government. I mean, what signals does it send, and what's new and what's missing?
Great. Nadia, most people are going to be focused on the budget measures, the announcements. That's part of the budget, which is the expenditure. But the overall budget is the expenditure as well as the income that the government receives. So the first observation I have is actually the elephant in the room. The gap between the government's income and its expenditure, what it's spending. And PM just announced that there's a budget surplus for the last FY and a projected budget surplus for the coming FY. Now, a budget surplus in the start of the term of government is not something surprising. In fact, it's very routine, it's very unsurprising. What is surprising is the why and the extent of that surplus. So PM announced that the budget surplus for the last FY25 was about 1.9% of GDP. That's a large amount, and most certainly probably larger than expectations. One level lower than that, we must understand why, and PM probably spent a lot of time explaining the corporate income tax increases. For MOF officers like myself, our usual rule of thumb is that corporate income tax contributes 3% of GDP. For the last few years, it's gone up to 4%, and PM hinted that last year it was even more than 4%. That 1% or 1.5 percentage points is a significant bumper crop of surpluses from corporates paying taxes in Singapore that we should be very, very thankful for, and it's the large driver of the budget surplus for last year and the projected budget surplus for next year. The question is why? I suspect it's because of previous budgets that invested in making Singapore a great place to do business, a safe place to do business, and a stable place to continue your business. And it's not just the economic programs that we have, but even the security programs. And PM spent some time talking about defense expenditure, how we're prepared to do more. All that contributes into an environment that seems to give us an additional Singapore stability premium that we've not had before. And that additional fiscal buffer is going to be very exciting for the government to decide how to deploy in the years to come. So that's the first observation I have.
Right. So basically, strengthening Singapore's hub as a trusted and reliable hub is something that helps Singapore's fiscal balancing. I would say. I guess, you know, as I mentioned before, you were also the budget director in the last two budgets. What's one item in this year's budget that may seem big in spending but definitely critical?
Big in spending and definitely critical. Let me think about that. Overall, the budget items, if you ask me, and this is credit to the MOF team, were very comprehensive, but also very routine. There were no big pieces of announcements other than the AI strategy and how AI, and PM is going to actually chair his AI council. But overall, there were incremental policy moves that are in the same direction as previous budgets, which means that the government's policy direction is probably going to be about the same. I do suspect that if you ask different stakeholders, the direction is going to be very different. The business community, you've started by saying that they might be happy with some of the grants and all. I take a different view. I think that the business cost side, the foreign manpower changes might be a bit of a squeeze for many businesses. And the progressive wage credit scheme, which PM also announced an extension of, is pretty much just a band-aid. It's not long enough and it's not high enough. And many businesses are probably going to tell you, and they're definitely going to tell me that as well. So there's a bit of a balance there. The economic programs will continue, but we have to be very mindful to watch business costs.
Right, so let's move on now to cost of living pressures. I mean, given the stabilizing inflation and the repeated tranches of, you know, CDC vouchers, what do you make of the $500 CDC voucher that was announced today? I see it as probably a Goldilocks level, Nadira. Not too high, not too low. The truth is, even though inflation has moderated to less than 1% or about 1% last year, on the ground I still see a lot of residents having elevated anxieties about the cost of living, especially retired seniors. Because if you think about it, 1% is an increase on a high cost base. And if you're a retired senior, you don't earn an income that increases over time. So you're still faced with these high costs year on year. And the CDC vouchers will be very welcome by my community in Jalan Besar, definitely. And I think by all Singaporeans, especially those who don't directly benefit from the economy through higher wages. Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Loh. So, as you've heard there from Jalan Besar MP Sean Loh, you know, there's still a lot more work to be done. And, you know, the CDC vouchers is obviously going to be welcomed by a lot of Singaporeans, especially the seniors. Back to you, Don.
Well, thank you, Nadira. That was our reporter, Nadira Zaidi, there with the latest reactions from Parliament House. And let's return to my guests here in studio, Selina Ling, Chief Economist and Head of OCBC Group Research, and Associate Professor Walter Teixeira from the School of Business at SUSS. Now, before Budget 2026, economists had warned that rapid AI adoption might unsettle workers, right? That if it were poorly managed, it might introduce, and arguably maybe has already introduced, some anxiety among workers. The government now says it's going to press ahead with this on a national level, but not at the expense of workers. There will be strong transition support. So from an economic standpoint, Selina, is this the right framework to manage that type of disruption and to manage the anxieties as well?
Well, I think it's uncomfortable truth that, you know, when you deploy AI and you look for productivity and efficiency gains, most employers and companies will think, okay, does it mean that we can be even more manpower lean, right? Hire fewer workers and we've already seen, AI kind of like disrupting some jobs for, coding and even legal compliance type of jobs, things that used to take X number of humans, and now it can be done in a twinkle of an eye, right? So the approach, I think, is right. The government really has to be looking at it from how to kind of future-proof workers' skills. So the focus on basically the skills up, skilling and training programs. How can they basically embrace AI? Because you will still need skilled workers to incorporate AI into the business workflow. It's not like you don't need any workers at all, right? But it's a question of skills, AI technology. Are you actually at the forefront, or are you lagging behind? So I think, basically this transitional support rather than, feeding the man the fish, you're giving him the skills on how to learn to fish. I think that will continue. That's the approach.
The issue here, though, is we're not talking about one man. We're talking about almost everybody, right? So we're talking about AI skills and training and the learning of it at scale on a national level. That's what the emphasis is, right? Building those AI capabilities across the board, starting with white-collar professions like accountancy, legal work as well. Labour experts had said before Budget 2026 that retraining at scale like this, it is tough, Walter, right? So do you think these sectors, the white-collar sector, the legal sector, is it the right starting place?
Yeah, so I think the sectors that were chosen as kind of a test bed to kick this off with, they were chosen because there's already evidence, both in Singapore as well as globally, that actually AI workflows and processes are actually improving productivity dramatically. And so I think for us, it's really a question of if you don't do anything about it, your corporates are going to do it anyway, and the real risk is that they're going to do it in a way which is going to be incredibly disruptive for jobs and people's livelihoods. So you had better work hand in hand with them, support them, and actually tie your support. And I think that's the thing which I hope will happen when you get down to brass tacks, right? Tie the support to making sure that the corporates who benefit from this hand-holding and money and so on also improve jobs, because adaptation is actually much better than having to have a worker lose their job and then retrain. So I think that's the mindset we should have, is about adapting people to jobs rather than to throw them out of the job and then retrain them afterwards.
Yeah, the fallout would be leaving workers behind. Let's get back to our reporter, Nicholas Ng, who is at AI Singapore for more. Nicholas.
Hello, Dawn. I'm afraid I didn't quite catch your question. Could you repeat it again, please?
Oh, Nicholas, we were talking here about job redesign and actually rolling out AI retraining at scale, which economists have said is going to be pretty challenging to do. Could you get Professor Brian Lowe's take on this, perhaps?
Yeah, sure, Dawn. So Professor Brian and I spoke a bit about having to train up the high-level kinds of AI talent, the sort of thing that does extremely advanced research. And he was explaining that this is part of our national competitiveness. But the other aspect to that, as he was telling me earlier, was that it's not so easy to find. Now, Professor Brian, could you explain to us what the challenges are when it comes to finding this level of talent, and whether or not Singapore's IHLs are necessarily providing the right kind of talent for this development?
Right. So going forward, I would say that this is something that we are pushing for very, very rapidly, because we needed this kind of talents to come into the ecosystem so that the big techs will be interested to come in. Not just that, our universities will be able to do state-of-the-art research. And over at AI Singapore, what we do have is the AI Singapore PhD fellowships, and we are targeting global talents as well as local talents. I would really want to push for grooming the local talents to be able to do research on the world stage. Now, at the same time, right, we wanted to launch this thing called the Accelerated Masters Program within AI Singapore. That's the one where we are going to encourage undergraduates to be exposed to research so that they might want to consider research in the future.
And Professor, I think the end result of that, of course, as we discussed earlier, was that we would be more competitive as a country to draw on that big AI investment. But something else that Mr. Wong brought up was making sure that IHLs make sure that their students are effectively, I think Digital Development Information Minister Josephine Teo would use the word AI bilingual.
Right.
But if these institutes of higher learning were to have more of that, do you think that that would allow better, would you think that that would provide the right kind of AI talent for what Singapore needs?
I would think so. As an example, the various universities have already looked into launching AI degrees. As an example, NUS has recently launched a few AI degrees, some of which are more focused on the technical aspects. There are also AI degrees that are more focused on the governance aspects. So these are the ones that will be willing to actually go into more in-depth classes, right, in AI, so that they can understand AI more deeply.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Sure.
Thanks very much for that, Nicholas. Now, picking up on what Associate Professor Brian Lowe was talking about, they're grooming local talent, this accelerated master's program. There are multiple training options, right? Training courses and so on. There's also now a redesign of the Skills Future website to make AI learning pathways even clearer. Now, before the budget, we had been talking about one challenge, which is navigating, courses. What is there? I mean, I think Prime Minister Lawrence Wong also made reference to it in the budget. Knowing what course to actually choose and getting help to do that. Does this structural redesign meaningfully improve access, Selina?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the redesigned Skills Future website. I was one of the many Singaporeans, I think, who were looking for courses to utilize my Skills Future late last year before the expiry of the tranche.
Yeah.
It was challenging, basically because of the pent-up demand. But I think generally, what I would like to see really is a clear pathway. I mean, we talk about modular steps to certification at the IHLs, but trying to find sense, in terms of the Skills Future offering, because a lot of them are, basic kind of introduction, whether it's to use ChatGPT or Copilot. Right. But beyond that, how do I build deeper skills on how to use AI tools? I think particularly for, like the finance industry or whatever industry you're in, I think that's really where we need to see clarity, the right pathway on building blocks for AI competency.
Right. Walter, what criteria would one really need to narrow down when it comes to sort of navigating these courses and making the right choice?
Right. So I think this is actually one area where I think there is actually great potential for customized AI to actually help the job seeker or help the training seeker try to understand a bit more about their own skills and strengths, where they could actually branch their training or skills into, and then to suggest to them perhaps a customized suite of courses or ideas for them to pursue further. So I mean, I really think we ought to be applying AI to the redesign and to the management and coaching of potential trainees actually to find better course opportunities out there. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I would also, I think, encourage that we think about this more broadly. It's not just about, I think, taking a course in Skills Future, a formal training course. It is actually much more, I think, about on-the-job training and learning by doing, which is really what is going to accelerate AI adoption and practical AI-boosted productivity. Because I think when you look at businesses which are already adopting AI, quite often it's because there are a couple of pioneers in the business who go and get AI subscription, maybe it's even their own personal subscription. They start using it and they discover it really saves a lot of time and effort and energy. And then maybe other people in the business come around and say, how are you doing it? Can I learn from you? And that's actually how it spreads. And I think we need to pay more attention to this. That might be more effective than doing formal courses outside.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for that. I was going to say, learning by doing is a very important part of this. Nothing better than getting free access to the 6 months of free access to premium AI tools for people taking selected courses. Well, here's a summary of what you can expect from Budget 2026. Support for Singaporeans and families with children will come in the form of a cost of living special payment. And depending on eligibility, that will range between $200 and $400. CDC vouchers will also continue with $500 for all Singaporean households. USave rebates for utilities can go up to $570 for eligible households. And with an ageing population, there will also be support for seniors to age well. This comes in the form of a $1,500 CPF top-up and higher CPF contribution rates for senior workers. There will also be a new investment scheme for CPF members. Families with greater needs will also see Comlink Plus enhanced, with higher payouts for those attending preschool regularly and holding stable employment. Now, to navigate a challenging global economy, helping firms manage costs will come in the form of a 40% corporate income tax rebate, as well as pushing for companies to expand abroad. To help firms internationalize, there will be more grant support for SMEs and even support for non-SMEs. It's time for a short break, but don't go away. We will be right back with more highlights, reactions and insights on the measures announced in Budget 2026. Stay with us.
In the world of trade, it helps to be part of a network.
Well, not just any network. UOB's network.
The most extensive network in ASEAN.
Through this network, you can connect directly to my business.
And mine.
And mine.
And mine! With this network, you can source for supplies big
and small across supply chains.
And connect to sector specialists through 500 UOB offices globally.
With access to an end-to-end platform that syncs up your entire value chain.
For a complete view of your trade and cash position across borders on one single interface.
And that's what makes UOB the one bank for ASEAN.
It's where the region's most extensive trade network meets a truly integrated supply chain platform. And there's just one more thing to say. Be part of ASEAN's most extensive trade network.
What are some ways to slow down and even reverse aging?
Continue doing your lifestyle modification, and I foresee that the sugar and the cholesterol will definitely improve further.
Treat the brain like a muscle. The more you use it, the better and stronger it becomes.
Okay, 跟着我啊，我去 B。
Counter-Strike can be beneficial because first and foremost, it's a team game.
When you go for a class, there is social connection and purpose.
Doing art activities can promote brain health.
The art is very good. Everybody was so happy.
Now I have the confidence to talk to people.
I learned a lot of things and it made me feel better.
I feel more happy, more confident, more active.
The Science of Aging Well, every Thursday on CNA.
Brought to you by Agency for Integrated Care.
What if you think your boyfriend was cheating on you? What if a wife suspects her husband leads a double life?
Next Thursday?
I'll keep my days free for you. What if you're caught in a compromising position? In India, a growing band of private detectives are capitalizing on the business of love.
Everyone is suffering from something or other in their lifetime. As you need doctors, as you need lawyers in your lifetime somehow, you need detectives also.
The Love Auditors, Saturday on CNA.
For those just joining us, here's a recap of what you can expect from Budget 2026. Support for Singaporeans and families with children will come in the form of a cost of living special payment. Depending on eligibility, that will range between $200 and $400. CDC vouchers will also continue with $500 for all Singaporean households. YouSave rebates for utilities can go up to $570 for eligible households as well. With an ageing population, there will also be support for seniors to age well. This comes in the form of a $1,500 CPF top-up and higher CPF contribution rates for senior workers. There will also be a new investment scheme for CPF members. Families with greater needs will also see Comlink Plus enhanced with higher payouts for those attending preschool regularly and holding stable employment. To navigate a challenging global economy, helping firms manage costs will come in the form of a 40% corporate income tax rebate, as well as pushing for companies to expand abroad. To help firms internationalize, there will be more grant support for SMEs and even support for non-SMEs. And for a closer look at some of the major announcements from this year's budget, let's return to Nadira Zaidi, and she is at Singapore's Parliament House for us. Nadira, any surprises from this year's speech at all?
Definitely, Dawn. There were some surprises, like the CDC vouchers, for example, because when I spoke to experts, a lot of them were not expecting CDC vouchers to be given, or slightly less of the CDC vouchers to be given, amount of CDC vouchers to be given. But yet here we are, $500 CDC vouchers to be given out by January 2027. There's also the cost of living payments between $200 to $400. All this to support Singaporeans with the rising cost of living and uncertainties, and also the push to deepen AI adoption is something that stood out for me, especially with the new AI Council and the AI Park. Now, joining me now is MP for Holland Bukit Timah GRC, Edward Chia. He's also the Deputy Chairperson of the Finance and Trade and Industry GPC.
Hi, Nadira.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Chia, for joining us here today. I guess the first question is on the CDC vouchers as well as the cost of living payments. You know, your residents would be very happy to hear about this, but is it really enough, to help them cope with the cost of living pressures, and what are they saying, really?
So first of all, I think our residents are really overjoyed with the extension of the CDC vouchers and also the extension of the cost of living support. But I think what we hear on the ground is that although inflation has tapered, prices remain high and elevated. So I think all this support does really help. I think during the budget, what was also announced was additional support for younger families. And where I serve in the Zhenghua division, we do have quite a lot of young families, and many of them are also concerned about childcare and raising our child. So I think the extension of the Life SG child credit would also be welcome news, plus also the increase in terms of cap for childcare subsidies in terms of income level qualification. I think that will also mean more families are able to receive childcare subsidies.
Right, so Mr. Chair, as you were saying earlier, inflation has largely tapered off, but is that really reflected on the ground?
Prices remain high. So inflation is basically the rate of increase, but we are not in a deflationary space. So while inflation is tapering, yes, price increases are tapering off, prices remain high. Hence, I feel that now the real approach is really how we can continue to boost real income growth. And I think PM's, in as many of the announcements in terms of supporting employers and workers, and the focus on AI is really, at the end of the day, providing better jobs, good jobs for Singaporeans, which must translate to real income growth. And I think that's the most sustainable way to ensure that while cost remains high, but we improve the standard of living because real wages are increasing.
Right, so you're also part of the parliamentary committee looking at trade and industry policies. I mean, what do you make of AI being the national mission?
I think it's timely and it's important. On the ground, as MP, when I meet residents, I could sense anxiety about AI. Would they be displaced by AI? Will AI take over their jobs? And I think even for businesses, they hear a lot about AI, but they can't really see how AI tools can also help them improve firm-level productivity. So the fact that there's a National AI Council, importantly chaired by the Prime Minister, signals the urgency and the importance of how we can help workers, residents, and employers to leverage AI as a tool to uplift productivity, and basically means better jobs, better incomes as well. I think the challenge right now with all this is how can we get this diffused much faster? I think there's a need for speed, especially for SMEs. SMEs employ 7 out of 10 of Singaporean workers. How can we enable SMEs to have better AI literacy so they know actually what tools they need to enable their businesses and how that's translated as quickly as possible. So I welcome the news, and I think now it's about implementation, and now it's about diffusion, making sure there is widespread adoption.
Yeah, so you touched on this a little bit earlier, but how will all these AI measures trickle down to everyday Singaporeans?
I think everyday Singaporeans, as mentioned earlier, 7 out of 10 are working within SMEs. So it's so important now to double down efforts to engage outreach to SME owners and says this AI is a phenomenal tool. These are the government support. I think what was announced as well during the budget was the expansion of the Productivity Solutions Grant that includes now AI tools. I think that will be helpful. I hope the SME centres, the Trade Association and Chambers could quickly get a download of this information and disseminate this as quickly as possible to their members and to as many SMEs as possible. On the worker front, I think PM also announced that the Skills Future website will be updated. So to ensure that when the individual learns about AI, there is a guided, clearer AI skills map that's relevant for their particular job. He is right. All right. Even for myself, I actually subscribe to premium AI subscription. Not cheap, not cheap. And I think the fact that he's now supporting at least government is going to support 6 months of paid premium subscription really helps, because you can only learn by using. And to make sure that learning is inclusive, the government is now stepping in to provide 6 months of subscription for the paid services. I think that really helps both the individual workers, and I hope the firm levels they get the download quickly and we can help guide them as quickly as possible.
Right, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So as you've heard there from MP of Holland and Bukit Timah GRC, Edward Chia, there's really support measures for every Singaporean and as well as businesses. But there is a need to speed up these adoption, especially when it comes to AI. Back to you, Don.
Thanks very much for that, Nadira. That was our reporter there, Nadira Zaidi at Singapore's Parliament House. Now back to our studio guests, Selina, Ling and Walter Thesera. Singapore is doubling down, according to this budget, on job security for mid-career workers as well. This was an interesting point because there's a very strong focus on senior workers as well. Selina, the budget is expanding training to part-time learners too. I picked up on that one. From your perspective, does lowering the opportunity cost of actually reskilling materially change behaviour, though? Because mid-career workers still have deep barriers in a way to finding new work, transitioning and so on. They still have to face that. They need employer support in this journey as well.
Yeah, so definitely. I think if you're in full-time work, then it's really about carving out time and space to actually undertake further training. And you really need employer support on that part. So it works if the objectives are aligned between the employer and also the worker itself. But actually, I'm quite encouraged. I was looking at the Skills Future training utilization rates. So if you look at the 40 to 59-year-olds, the utilization rate is already above 55%. Yeah. It's the senior workers, those 60 and above, where it's still relatively low. You're talking about 34% as of the end of last year. So if you can bring the training up, the skills up, then of course you're talking about increased employability opportunities for the seniors as well. And that, I think, is in line with basically, this move towards a super aged society, keeping people who live longer, gainfully employed for longer as well, and ensuring that everyone shares in the fruits of growth through income. Yeah.
Walter, mid-career Singaporeans, when it comes to Skills Future Level Up, we're looking at a decent number there. Over 60,000 of them have taken up that. Is that at a macro level, though? Is that scale to you enough to actually shift issues to do with productivity? If you're looking at the metric of productivity and wage growth, is that good enough?
So I was actually positively surprised by that. I mean, I think, to be honest, I think there was a larger number of Singaporeans who've utilized that particular credit than I thought. But I think it is a question of timing. And by timing, I mean that I think all of us now today, we know that we may need to pivot in our careers once, maybe more than once over the course of our lifespan, right? Especially since we can expect to live and contribute healthily to a much older age. But in terms of timing, I think what we want is for workers to be able to understand when their job role or when their industry might be in decline, and then for them to catch a wave going into something that can utilize their skills better and provide them with the next boost to their career and employment. And what I'm worried about is that, with the way things currently designed, with, for example, the constraints workers have, which is they don't get enough time off from their employer to train and so on, workers may be stuck in this position where they have to wait to get retrenched before they can take advantage of retraining. And then by then I'd say maybe it's a bit too late. We really want people to actually catch a wave and get out early rather than wait for the worst to happen to them.
So we saw from the Prime Minister's budget speech the extension of the senior employment credit. It is being framed as supporting age-friendly workplaces, right? Selina, economically though, how sustainable is it to use a model that relies really on a type of a wage subsidy? This credit is a type of wage subsidy to keep seniors employed.
Well, I think it's very much, you need a mindset shift, right? The senior employment credit is just a nudge in the right direction, is to try and incentivize firms to start thinking about redesigning jobs to employ seniors. But actually, if you look at the employment rate for seniors above 65 years old, it's still relatively low. You're talking only about 31.5% as of last year. So there is huge scope for improvement from here. So I think this extension of the senior employment credit will go some way to saying, we can make more progress on this front.
Yeah. So on the issue of mid-career reskilling, Walter, the budget links that with continued openness to foreign talent as well. This is a perennial issue for Singapore. We put the spotlight on it in one way or another. How should Singapore balance assurance for local workers with the need for this continued need for global skills without actually fueling perceptions of competition between the two groups?
Right. So I think in the popular discourse, it's very common that many of us think about it as an either-or question, right? So we think, okay, either this job opportunity is going to go to a Singaporean or it's going to go to a foreigner. But I don't think it's an either-or issue. I think rather it's an issue about how can we get the right mix of talent and businesses into Singapore to support and drive the local economy and to create jobs for Singaporeans that we want. And I think we have to recognize that when it comes to some of these emerging areas like AI adoption and so on, many of these top AI talents are not going to be homegrown. We would like for them all to be homegrown, but we don't have the numbers and capability to do it necessarily from the get-go. So if we can bring in the talent from abroad judiciously, if we can ensure that they don't displace Singaporeans, and I think that's where the calibration adjustments to the employment pass qualifying salaries come from, right? You want them to actually take the really specialized jobs at the top and not the middle market jobs where the Singaporeans can get their foot in the door. And then the Singaporeans can upskill, have the skills transfer, capability transfer, and then become much more equipped to take on the top jobs in the near future. But we do need a systematic way of ensuring the jobs do filter down, the skills do filter down. What we don't want, I think, is Singapore washing, where you import some kind of, outfit from abroad, and they move to Singapore to take advantage of the low-tax environment, to rebrand as a Singapore company, and then, that doesn't really help us. So I think we want genuine companies developing our talent pipeline here. We need to focus on that.
Yes, and an emphasis, as you said, on calibrating the qualifying criteria as well. That's important. Let's get to more reaction from the Association of Small and Medium Enterprises on the budget speech. And for that, Aslam Shah, he joins us now. He is at the SME Centre at ASME. He's with the president of ASME, Angyut. Aslam.
Yes, John, the Prime Minister began his speech with plenty of announcement, enhancing existing schemes and also setting new directions in internationalization. And joining me right now is the President of the Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, Angyut. Now, Angyut, tell me more about these announcements from your observation. Is there a new direction that the government is leading SMEs towards?
Aslam, I was listening to all the various comments, and what I wanted to point out is that one very subtle but very significant direction setting that we see from the association is this thing on the government looking at the ecosystem approach. If you look at the trend in the last few years from the geopolitics and what's been happening, is that it's starting to become an ecosystem versus ecosystem kind of battle as the global trade routes are rerouted and new models are created. And when you're dealing with the ecosystem versus ecosystem, a national approach towards ecosystem and recognition that we got to, create, harness, and then build the ecosystem is really important, because with the ecosystem, then you ensure that all the businesses, large and small and micro, actually gets to thrive within that. And I see that as a recognition and the direction setting in this area. And I thought that's really quite significant in a direction setting perspective.
But Angrid, I mean, recently, from Parliament to even discussions on online and social media, there have been a lot of pain points that SMEs have highlighted, including rent, competitive wages, and also AI adoption. Some new announcements which the Prime Minister mentioned during his speech as well. Now, from what you see, are these enhancements and also new schemes enough to relieve these existing pain points for SMEs?
Yeah. So if you look at the cost perspective, I think if you heard some of the other interviewees, like Sean was sharing, I think that cost continues to be challenging. We are seeing some tweaks to the current LQS as well as EP, and they will continue to give pressure to the businesses in terms of cost. We were hoping that the cost could be managed a little, because right now, the new direction setting, I think that's a good direction, and it will take a while for these new markets direction, doubling down on AI, ecosystem play, to actually give that kind of uplift, and therefore allowing businesses that room to breathe, and then costs can continue to build, right? But that is a current concern. But overall, in terms of directionally and where you are looking at new potential market, I think that this area where we are blowing open the ecosystem around AI, doubling on the 4 AI missions, and then strengthening that area and internationalization, all of that actually would give that expansion possibility and the headroom for the businesses and SMEs to actually do better and open that market.
So Angrid, with costs set to continue putting pressure on SMEs, how will internationalization be appealing to them? The Prime Minister mentioned about venturing to areas like Latin America, Africa. These are areas where, maybe geographically pretty far, and language-wise there might be some concerns in terms of language and also culturally as well. How will this be appealing for them, and what potential do you see in terms of opportunities in these areas?
Yes, very true. What you're dealing with is that, we are no longer looking at the traditional businesses in terms of internationalization. Traditionally, you think that you've got to have resources and then you go abroad. Now, in this current day and age where we are dealing with a global contestation and new economic order, I think all businesses must think about the internationalization in their own way. And for the smaller businesses, small and micro businesses, the way they internationalize will be slightly different from the larger ones with more resources. And this is where, some of the support that we see from the government really coming in to help, going from 50% to 70%. I think there'll be granular breakdown in terms of how this will work out. And I think from an association perspective, that's where we are working with government to look at how we can help and customize this support, right? So that it's more targeted at the small and micro businesses. For example, if you could bring a few businesses coming together to share their resources, share the move abroad, and co-share the risk, I think that would be a lot better. So that's one area in terms of supporting local businesses abroad. When dealing with where the potential opportunities are, traditionally, I think even now, for SMEs, it's still ASEAN. But I think increasingly, new markets like Africa and Middle East, Africa, as well as South America, I think these are real interesting areas to target. But for SMEs, especially small and micro, to take advantage of that, the kind of support that they need would be a bit different, and we will need to customize it to that. And I really hope that we can actually look at that level of granularity to do that kind of support, because opportunities would then make them be able to capitalize and then grow our economy better.
Thank you. So plenty to look forward to and to think about for small and medium enterprises. I was speaking with Angrid, President of ASME. Back to you, Dawn.
Aslam, thank you for that. CNA's reporter Aslam Shah there, and Ang Yut, president of ASME. Thank you. All right, so back to my studio guests here, and picking up on what Ang Yut said about internationalization. He said all businesses have to start to think about internationalization in their own way, whether they're big, whether they're small. Selina, is this internationalization push a strategic pivot? Almost, partly because global supply chains have become more selective, they've moved around.
Yeah, so I think it's inevitable. Actually, in the past budgets, they've always pushed, local companies to move overseas, starting with more familiar backyard like ASEAN, and then now to new frontier markets, Latin America, Middle East, and even Africa. I think there are a couple of reasons for this. One, of course, is geopolitics. We see a lot of nearshoring, friendshoring, the whole realignment of supply chains depending on who you're politically aligned with. Yeah. And I think that's inevitable. It may not change in the short term. So firms have no choice but, to embrace this trend as well. But of course, with newer frontier markets comes greater risk. But I think if you look at it from the nation's point of view, it's really not just about looking for fresh markets that firms can go into. It's also about building economic resilience, right? So there was mention about the essential supplies from New Zealand, for instance. So it's really about how you can fortify, the nation against all these different global headwinds that are actually evolving. And I think looking at new markets, probably in the age of AI and digital economy, it probably means that the barriers to entry, although still high, it's actually probably a little bit more approachable, with given the right resources, the right advice, and right schemes to help you along.
Walter, even with generous government support, overseas expansion is hard, right? It is something that companies may contemplate, but they don't contemplate it lightly, and certainly they may not be necessarily suited to it. What do SMEs really underestimate the most, though, when they do go abroad, that makes it so risky?
So I think one of the big challenges that SMEs are going to face going abroad, of course, whether it's the region or whether it's much further afield like Africa, Latin America, is, simply put, the way of doing business is just completely different. It's not the perhaps the more organized, more bureaucratic and rules-bound way of doing business that we have in Singapore. It could be a lot more freewheeling. It could be a lot more dynamic. And that's something that sometimes we have a bit of trouble adapting to, perhaps. But maybe I want to take a step back and, maybe re-ask the question, why is it that we want to do this? And I think it's really about the comparative advantage of the Singapore story. It's about bringing the way of doing business in Singapore, the productivity, the brand, and so on, to markets which may not have had the same exposure and where we can maybe make a difference to the economy there as well as, of course, to our SMEs. And I think it is also about looking for the growth story as well. And here the growth story is that, for example, it's only Africa, that's the only major, continent which is still expected to have demographic population growth. Everywhere else, you're going to have population decline in the next couple of decades, even in the region, China certainly, India as well, increasingly. So when all the other markets are slowing down, it would make logical sense that this is a market you can go into. And I would also say Singapore does not have baggage, right? Because in some of these markets, you don't have the baggage that a major country competitor might have, because then you start worrying about geopolitical alignment and things like that. No issue with Singapore. Nobody would have a problem with Singapore going in, I believe, to some of these markets.
Yeah, beyond products and services and the existence of certain markets within those jurisdictions, Selina, there are other factors to take into account if you are going to venture abroad. Now, the Prime Minister, as Walter pointed out, that he called out Latin America, Africa, the Middle East as well. So what is pulling Singapore there? Is it the consumers? Is it the fact that they have infrastructure built? Because, just the lack of a road, a major highway can be a serious barrier to business.
Well, I think it's really following where the growth story is, right? So Middle East is booming for certain financial services and, air logistics, for instance. Africa has certain resources, which are, of course, critical mineral resources now are in great demand. for selected industries. And then for Latin America, also because it's sited quite close to the American market, so if you look at the way global forces are shaping up, if you really have tripolar type of spheres of influence, people producing in Latin America for the American market, you have people producing in China for the Chinese market, and ASEAN is kind of like a little bit more free trade oriented. We can serve anywhere in the world. And for companies, they just have to really follow the growth and the money. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the fiscal position as well now from the Prime Minister's budget speech. I mean, Singapore's FY 2026 budget, it does remain in surplus at about 8.5 billion, he mentioned. The margin, though, Selina, it is tightening. That's as the government is ramping up and preparing, of course, for a more uncertain world and certain changes. Operating revenue, again, projected at about $135 billion. Total spending has risen faster to roughly 137 billion. That, of course, because of higher development investment. Selina, Singapore is still projecting this fiscal surplus, but it's much smaller than last year, comparatively. Because of that acceleration in spending. I mean, economically, though, does this look like the right balance between investing for the future and also preserving our fiscal buffer?
Well, Singapore has always adopted a very fiscally prudent approach. Typically, we tend to run bigger than expected fiscal surpluses. That's a happy problem. It gives us the fiscal space to invest in very long-term projects. And, really putting where the money, where the mouth is, right? You're talking about 37 billion going to the RIE 2030, for instance. And who knows how much this whole AI missions initiative is going to cost. So I think generally, we are doubling down on a lot of our efforts, whether it's in terms of skills future, capacity building, building the whole AI infrastructure ecosystem, trying to uplift all workers, seniors included, the disabled included, and also in terms of trying to support, family-friendly kind of initiatives. So all this costs big money. Singapore has always been very fortunate through very wise planning to make sure that we have the fiscal resources to spend big on the bets that we want to make.
All right, thank you for those thoughts, Selina and Walter. Well, let us go for a quick break now. We'll be right back with more reactions and analysis to Budget 2026. So stay with us.
Trade, it helps to be part of the network.
Well, not just any network. UOB's network.
The most extensive network in ASEAN.
Through this network, you can connect directly to my business.
And mine.
And mine.
And mine! With this network, you can source for suppliers big
and small across supply chains.
And connect to sector specialists through 500 UOB offices globally.
With access to an end-to-end platform that syncs up your entire value chain.
For a complete view of your trade and cash position across borders on one single interface.
And that's what makes UOB the one bank for ASEAN.
It's where the region's most extensive trade network meets a truly integrated supply chain platform. And there's just one more thing to say. Be part of ASEAN's most extensive trade network.
Welcome back to the Singapore Budget 2026 show. And here's a summary of what you can expect from this year's budget. Now, support for Singaporeans and families with children will come in the form of a cost of living special payment. Now, depending on eligibility, that will range between $200 and $400. CDC vouchers will also continue with $500 for all Singaporean households. You save rebates for utilities can go up to $570 for eligible households. With an ageing population, there will also be support for seniors to age well. This comes in the form of a $1,500 CPF top-up and higher CPF contribution rates for senior workers. There will also be a new investment scheme for CPF members. And families with greater needs will also see Comlink Plus enhanced with higher payouts for those attending preschool regularly and holding stable employment. Now, to navigate a challenging global economy, helping firms manage costs will come in the form of a 40% corporate income tax rebate, as well as pushing for companies to expand abroad. To help firms internationalize, there will be more grant support for SMEs and even support for non-SMEs. Right now, in his speech, the Prime Minister singled out the outcomes that policies deliver in people's lives. He referenced tracking results in order to assess what's working, what is making a real difference as well. So let's get back to Selina Ling and to Professor Walter Teixeira here. When it comes to the issue of business growth, right, manpower comes up, the costs of that it's always a bottleneck in some form or another, getting the right kind of people and so on. When it comes to upgrading and the flexibility for companies, you know, where should the line be drawn between those two objectives, flexibility and forcing upgrading? Because that seems to be the narrative. We all have to upgrade in one way or another.
Well, I think it's always a very tight rope, right? Because you can use a carrot approach or you can use a stick approach. And I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, this upgrading of the whole qualifying salaries, the EP and the S-Pass, criteria, is a constant nudge, for firms to always look for ways in which they can use less manpower, whether it is through CapEx or technology adoption. How can they improve productivity without increasing the number of workers? So it's a constant process. This is not new to Budget 2026, and we have seen this in previous budgets before.
Walter, when it comes to this issue of lack of workers, lack of productivity, which AI seems to be addressing a great deal, or even wage competitiveness, do you think that what you've heard today in the budget is going to go far enough to be able to address some of those sticking points of companies?
So I think it's a balance in the budget of the truly transformative and the incremental, right? So I think maybe just to talk about the incremental first, Selina already alluded to this earlier. It's this whole constant calibration of foreign manpower policy, nudging up the qualifying salaries, making sure that you're bringing in ever more skilled talent to make sure that firms do not rely on foreign manpower as a crutch or as an excuse, away from improving productivity. The transformative part, I think that is where we have to be placing these bets on AI. We indeed need the sectoral champions who show the way for the sector and how to adopt AI into workflows to improve productivity. Then we need the learning by doing to be disseminated down the value chain or down to smaller enterprises and so on, who can then adopt the same practices. Because without that, we will be just stuck, I think, in calibration. We may not make the leap forward we really need to make.
All right, let's get some more views on the ground. Our reporter, Caitlin Ng, she is at E2I Career Centre. E2I stands for Employment and Employability Institute, and it is under the labour movement. It also serves as a bridge between workers as well as employers. Caitlin, over to you. What stood out to you from this?
Yes, Dawn, I'm here at E2I Centre in the West. And sitting with me here is Chief Executive Officer of E2I, Corinne Lim. And we have been breaking down a little bit about what today's announcements mean for workers specifically. So Corinne, earlier before the commercial break, we did hear a bit about what firms are looking towards, especially after today's announcements. But what about for you? From the position of interacting with workers, what stood out to you from today's announcements?
Well, I think it was the very concerted plan on the use of AI. And I think it's important as a nation that we have a good, strong plan so that both workers and companies are able to seize the opportunities afforded by AI.
Understand. So with this whole idea of AI transformation, what do you think contributes to a firm and in turn its workers' success?
I think it's very important that as firms adopt AI, they bring along the workers, and workers need to be part of the process. It cannot be an afterthought. It cannot be implementing the process, getting the technology, and just telling the workers, please use it. Actually, we have found through our experience with the company training committees that bringing the workers upstream, bringing them even at the planning stage where the company discusses what their future is going to be like, what their transformation is going to be like in the next 5 years, and then how they get there is a very important step. It gives the workers ownership of the process, they understand the why, and they're able to convince fellow workers of the how. And that being the first step allows them to then have vested interest to also learn the technology, be trained in the technology, use the technology, and when companies are productive, we do then hope that the companies would also share the gains of productivity of the workers so that workers understand their stake in it. And I think that's very important in the AI journey.
Just now earlier in our chat, you did mention how E2I in itself is adopting some AI solutions. And how has that journey been like for you?
Okay. Yes, E2I has adopted AI in the virtual career coach, which is what the career coaches use as a platform to better understand what jobs are available and how to better match workers with jobs. And this is actually the technology behind the AI career coach, which is online. Now, in the beginning, when we introduced the AI technology, it wasn't smooth sailing. We introduced the virtual career coach 2 years ago. And one of the functions of the virtual career coach was that it was able to transcribe the whole discussion with the client. But it wasn't so straightforward. When it first did that, the transcription ran from pages to pages to pages, and the career coaches were telling me, actually, it's much easier for us to just type this out ourselves. It would take a lot less time. But we had to convince them. We told them that the AI career coach, the VCC, is like a child. The more you train it, the smarter it will be. And when it becomes smarter, it will then be your able assistant. And within 1 month, after 60 career coaches really spent time and effort correcting what was wrong with the transcription, it has come up with a near perfect product. And today, it is really, really a very good product that journeys with them, and they are able to save a lot of time typing out all the transcripts of the conversations with clients.
So as from what you're sharing, we can see that this AI transformation is a whole journey, but as with any journey, there is bound to be some roadblocks. And we have heard from Ms. Selina Ling in the studio earlier that there are some uncomfortable truths we also have to face with this AI adoption and the risks. So is there anything you hoped to have seen to support this whole AI transformation as well from today's announcements?
Yes, I think AI transformation is going to impact jobs, whether we like it or not. Whether or not your job changes in nature, or in some cases, certain jobs are going to be lost. And our general sense of it is that the jobs that are going to be lost are likely to be the PME jobs. So I did hope to see maybe greater support for PMEs in the Job Seeker Support Scheme, which today is pegged at $5,000. Maybe it can be considered in some form or another in future budgets.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lim. We've heard that there is so much to look forward to and also stuff to work on. So I've been here with Ms. Corinne Lim, and perhaps, Dawn, it's time to hear what our studio guests have to say about this as well.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much for that. Let's get back to Selina Ling and Associate Professor Walter Teixeira here in the studio on this. I mean, you heard there Corinne mention her disappointment that there wasn't more for PMEs as an example. Can I get your take on that? Selina, let's begin with you.
Okay. So I think if there's recognition that building skills is a continuous process and you're really trying to move up the ladder here, then of course the question is, what is sufficient resources for you to get on that pathway? So I think, if you're really talking about deep AI embedded skills, we could very well foresee a scenario where it could move beyond $5,000, right? So I think, we talked about this nudge behavior. Maybe if you have done the first few steps, you have utilized the 5,000, maybe it's time to reward workers who are really engaged in this journey with further additional resources, and that's possible for future budget consideration.
Right. Walter?
Yeah, so I think I share this concern. I think for PMEs who may face the risk of technological obsolescence, I think there are really two major concerns. One is that many of them may recognize there's a problem somewhere down the road and they want to do something about it, but then they face huge constraints at their current job or workplace from actually meaningfully doing something. And sometimes the employers also, they're not too incentivized to give the employees, for example, training time off, because the employers are thinking, I'm already short-staffed, I give you time off, and then you're going to learn how to do some other job, then you'll quit anyway. So I think this is one area where we didn't fit in the budget, but whether in the future we can even look at something like government paid training support for companies to be able to give at least some minimum training days, general training days for the companies, not something on-the-job training or your own role, workforce role, but more like general training the employee directs themselves. So that's one thing.
Right.
The other area, of course, could be what was mentioned also, job seeker support, which is currently designed more for the lower income workers. It's up to the medium income or so, but it's not really hitting the PMEs. And that's a group which I think really needs help, because many of them also have larger expenses due to the financial commitments, and they just can't afford to take the risk, And what we don't want is for them to get retrenched. They find the next available job. The next available job is a dead end for them, and that is just no good for them. Takes them off the career path. So they may need more support as well.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on that, because I was really thinking along the same lines. We have paternity leave, we have maternity leave, we have family leave, childcare leave. Why can't we have training leave? And in the same way that the government supports, Singaporean workers who go on national reservists, for instance, could we even consider some form of employment support for companies, to help workers go on training?
I think that that form of leave does exist, perhaps in some companies, but it certainly isn't something that is mandated at a national level. Something, again, worth considering. Well, it's time for a short break now, but don't go away. Our budget show 2026 is going to continue with more analysis just ahead, so do stay with us.
In the world of trade, it helps to be part of a network.
Well, not just any network. UOB's network.
The most extensive network in ASEAN.
Through this network, you can connect directly to my business.
And mine.
And mine.
And mine! With this network, you can source for supplies big
and small across supply chains.
And connect to sector specialists through 500 UOB offices globally.
With access to an end-to-end platform that syncs up your entire value chain.
For a complete view of your trade and cash position across borders on one single interface.
And that's what makes UOB the one bank for ASEAN.
It's where the region's most extensive trade network meets a truly integrated supply chain platform. And there's just one more thing to say. Be part of ASEAN's most extensive trade network.
Welcome back to the Singapore Budget 2026 show. Here's a recap of what Prime Minister Lawrence Wong announced in his budget statement earlier today. Now, support for Singaporeans and families with children will come in the form of a cost of living special payment. Depending on eligibility, that will range between $200 and $400. CDC vouchers will also continue this year with $500 for all Singaporean households. You save rebates for utilities. They can go up to $570 for eligible households. Now, with an aging population here in Singapore, there will also be support for seniors to age well. It comes in the form of a $1,500 CPF top-up and higher CPF contribution rates for senior workers. There will also be a new investment scheme for CPF members. Now, families with greater needs will also see Comlink Plus enhanced, with higher payouts for those attending preschool regularly and holding stable employment. Now, to navigate a challenging global economy, helping firms manage costs will come in the form of a 40% corporate income tax rebate. as well as pushing for companies to expand overseas. Now, to help those firms internationalize, there will be more grant support for SMEs, and there will even be support for non-SMEs. Now it's back to my studio guests. Here at the CNA studio, we have Selina Ling and Walter Teixeira, who've been patiently with us this past couple of hours. Now, let me get a question into you, Walter, about a quick one about the PAF rebate that we saw a bit earlier. I mean, just to remind our viewers of what happened. Effectively, this PAF rebate is going to lower the ARF payout when a car is deregistered. So how will that actually change the economics of the second-hand car market, you know, as an example, especially for sellers who rely on resale values? You know, could it dampen demand perhaps, or maybe shift pricing in that category?
Well, the PAF rebate is going to come into effect starting with cars which are registered with COEs in the next bidding cycle. But really what this PAF rebate reduction is all about is it's basically an effective increase in vehicle taxes. And the reason for that is today, your depreciation of a vehicle is actually greatly reduced if you get rid of the vehicle, if you scrap it before the 10th year. If you keep it beyond 10 years, then your depreciation actually instantly jumps because you lose the remaining PAF rebate. And what this change is about is it basically shrinks the PAF rebate to almost nothing at all at the end of 10 years. And that means that especially for vehicles with heftier PAF, and it also cut the maximum rebate payable. So for the more luxury end of vehicles, you're going to see quite a significant effective increase in their taxes and therefore their depreciation. And so I think the big effect on the vehicle market overall is that it is going to shift the market even more towards Chinese-made electric vehicles, which actually have pretty low PAF to begin with because they are benefiting from the upfront reduction in EV incentives and emissions incentives. So they already had this advantage. I think the advantage will shift even more in that direction. We'll probably see the market share grow, whereas people will be thinking twice perhaps about buying some of the more expensive PAF vehicles like the Continentals and things like that.
So also a nod towards doing something for climate action as well. Selina, let's change topics now and go to some other things that we saw in the budget statement. It's signalling more support for families that are caught between raising kids and caring for their parents, the so-called sandwich generation. You've got child life SG credits as well. We've seen those. What moves, this lever the most when it comes to families making decisions about whether to start having a family or to kind of, especially if they have the older generation to care for as well? What's going to move the needle?
Well, I think fiscal incentives are probably not going to be the game changer per se because, family decisions are really very complex. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity cost that is involved. Fiscal incentives do help at the margin, I think. And I think they will continue to kind of signal the government's continued support for family creation. I think, that will help to slow down, hopefully, the decline of fertility rates, but I don't think it's going to reverse the fertility rate per se. I think this cost of living issues really are not going to go away anytime soon. Yeah. Right? Inflation rates are low, but they are probably here to stay. The strong Sing dollar helps as well in terms of imported costs. But a lot of the domestic costs, I mean, you're talking about essential services, healthcare, education, all these are going to remain, the key drivers of inflation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be a lot of debate about, there has been a lot of debate about it, whether incentives change behavior for families. And Walter, we've seen family schemes before, right? It's not always clear if the benefits actually translate, benefits equals bigger families. Not always. So what's your take on that?
That's right. So I think when you look globally, there is no clear relationship between pronatal incentives and people having bigger families. Of course, I think all of it may help a bit on the margin, right? But I think one of the biggest challenges actually in Singapore in particular is whether we truly have a pro-family culture in terms of the workplace, for example, where employers recognize and respect employees' right to disconnect from the workplace when they go home, respect their right, for example, to end work on time so you can go home and pick up their kids from childcare and things like that. I think, unfortunately, for too many workers in Singapore, these kinds of rights are not fully respected. And maybe the problem goes both ways, because for a lot of our hard-charging workers out there, they don't want to take advantage of these policies anyway, because they want to prove to their boss that, you know, they should get promoted earlier and things like that. So it kind of goes both ways. And I think we kind of need this fundamental cultural shift as well. We've talked about improving work-life balance. We have, you know, new regulations in place that require employers to look at it seriously. But we need a cultural shift, that's one. And I think also not just at the workplace, but also in terms of the educational arms race, we may also need a more fundamental cultural shift there, because our thinking, of course, is fewer kids, invest in them more, have them go to the highest level of education or courses, whatever you want. I mean, that's our mindset, and we need to think about shifting away from that, because without that, we will not have the families who are having kids be motivated to have more, because they're going to ask the question, what, have more kids? And then I cannot give each of them the maximum advantage. This won't work, right? So that's the issue we have.
Yeah, so, I mean, the educational arms race, Selina, I mean, families really do have a lot to consider. Do you agree? I mean, the support, perhaps if a longer term sort of tail, a longer tail of support might change sort of the needle, move it?
Well, I don't think it's always about support per se. I think the support cannot only come from the government. So, I mean, we are seeing changes being made to the educational system, right? But parents also have to play ball, right? You know, the indicators of success in their children, you know, how are we going to benchmark it? Are we taking this work balance philosophy seriously? Are employers really fully embracing it, or only, you know, talking about it but not really walking the talk?
Exactly.
So a lot of factors involved, a lot of players involved as well.
Now, earlier on in the program, we brought up that ChatGPT generated word cloud, or, you know, word bubble. We've got the latest one for this year's budget, for budget 2026. And you can see there the very large letters AI right there amid the top other 5 words, the most frequently used in this year's budget. Families, companies, AI, growth and workers. I dare say AI was probably the most used, although I could be corrected. But I think, according to ChatGPT, that's what we're seeing. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the topic of the month, if not the year, right? It's all about AI, but the question is, how are we going to make sure that AI adoption benefits society and the whole Singapore economy as a whole?
Yeah. Walter?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's why it's important that the other words there were about things that we actually care about, like families, growth, you know, and things like that. Because ultimately, the AI has to be in service to society, the economy, families, and so on. And I think if we can nail that, then we'll have a real meaning to actually implement AI in all aspects of our lives and work.
Yeah, families first. Right, well, as we approach the end of our special coverage on Singapore's Budget 2026, we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to our guests here in studio, Selina Ling from OCBC and Associate Professor Walter Teixeira from the Singapore University of Social Sciences, and to our industry guests, Karen Lim from E2I, Associate Professor Brian Low from AI Singapore, and Ang Yut from the Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon for Budget 2026. We'll continue our in-depth look at all the measures announced today later. That is on Singapore Tonight at 10 p.m. But for now, East Asia Tonight is up after this, so stay tuned. Good night.